2nd. This is the Project Oversight Committee. I'd like to call this committee meeting to order. It's approximately 8:38, and want to start off by roll call. Chair is present. Vice Chair Michelle Brungraber is excused. Anthony Alto, excused. Edwin Sniffen said that he'd be a little late, but he's currently not here. Art Tolentino, excused. Robert Yu,
Here, Chair.
thanks. And for purposes of quorum, we would like to appoint Chair Colleen Hanabusa as ad hoc member of this committee.
I
Sure.
don't think there's
I got
quorum.
four on Edwin, but you don't have four.
Okay,
I was
so
gonna say,
Sorry, no, I.
Okay. So we're gonna take a brief recess until we can meet quorum. So my apologies, but let's take a brief recess.
I'm so sorry about
No,
that.
no worries.
I was wondering, where?
Thank you.
Yeah, you won't.
No, I can't.
Apologies again for that brief recess. We will call this committee meeting back to order. It's approximately 8:47 a.m. Thursday, November 2nd. We do now have Vice Chair Michelle Brungraber present via Zoom. Michelle, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can hear you fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we are appointing Chair Colleen Hanabusa as ad hoc member of this committee for purposes of making quorum so that we can conduct business. With that said, is there any public testimony online or in person?
You have to take roll, I think.
Do I have to take roll again or?
Up to you.
Okay. I think we took roll earlier, so, okay, thank you. Is there any public testimony, online or in person for any items on today's agenda, which is fairly light? Seeing none, I know that before we get into the monthly progress report, Nate, the PMOC report is not ready.
That's correct.
Okay. When you're ready.
All right. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Nate Meddings, Heart Project Director. I'm here to review agenda item number 3, September monthly progress report. As Kika indicated, this is Heart's progress report. The PMOC report is still outstanding. We have not received it yet. I'm going to go through briefly in the key items section, which can be found on page 5, and then open it up for questions on the overall report. So these are our attempt at trying to highlight the major items and give me a forum to talk to them at the POC meeting. But of course, you're welcome to ask any questions about what's going on the project. The first one talks about the CCUR projects. CCUR 3 or CCUR Downtown, which is Frank Coluccio Construction. They are still projected to be complete summer of next year, so summer of 2024. They're on schedule and on budget. That includes the electrical work that we change ordered in, of course. That work seems to be progressing at a pace where we expect full completion summer of 2024. CCUR 4, Dillingham, which is our critical path. They are 1 year into their 3-year contract. They're about 30% as far as work put in the ground. They have shown us that surprisingly, NAN can still finish as planned on schedule. Despite all the deviations from the plans and the difference in the work sequencing, they can still make that up and finish. That's the infrastructure work. The electrical work, of course, is an active procurement right now. It's out on the streets. We expect to open those bids. I believe it's November 15th.
The second.
It was the 2nd in September, but in October, if you guys recall, we bumped. Okay, so in October, we bumped both procurements, CCGS and CCUR 4E. This is the September report. So this says November 2nd, but our actual bids are due on November 15th. And that would complete our award for the Dillingham construction, our critical path. The next bullet, the third bullet there, talks about our segment 2. We are still driving towards a segment 2 opening date in 2025. The airport contractor, SDG, is almost buttoned up. We expect at least 2 of the stations to be substantially complete before year end, the other 2 hopefully by Q1 of next year. And then that is the civil works with SDG, and then the core systems work continues on for another year and a half, 2 years, and that's what gets us to that opening through the airport in 2025. And then our largest remaining contract, that last bullet talks about CCGS. We extended the date towards the end of the year to ensure that all of the offerers have the ability to secure their licensing, and that reflects the most up-to-date schedule. Happy to answer any questions on the report overall. Thank you.
Thanks, Nate. So sorry, before we go into questions, thanks, Chair, for giving me that reminder, but I guess we didn't finish the roll call. Just to note, myself present, we did take roll call before the recess. Vice Chair Michelle Brungraber is present. Anthony Alto is excused. Edwin Sniffen is excused. Art Tolentino is excused. Robert Yu is present. And we did appoint Chair Colleen Hanabusa as ad hoc member for purposes of meeting quorum. But I also do want to note the presence of member Edwin Young and Roger Morton being present at this committee as well. So thank you before. So with that said, do any members have any questions on the monthly progress report?
I have a question.
Yes, Chair.
Nate, I was looking at the intergovernment agreements, and this follows with what we're talking about at the last board meeting, and that was the issue of the rock. In other words, where are we with the technically it should be a transfer between the Hawaiian Homes Commission plus, well, it's trust lands and the city, subject of course to the provisions of 43 CFR Part 47. So I guess my question is, it's not listed as intergovernment agreements. So is it somewhere else in the report, or is for some reason it's not listed? Because my understanding is it is not complete.
Yeah, my understanding is that was not a hard item anymore, that we updated it and it was the city trying to work it out with DHHL, DLNR.
That's just, it's actually it's the Department of Interior.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
So it's not hard,
Yeah, we
Any-
stopped trying to facilitate that deal once it was elevated.
but it's technically Hart's equipment and everything else. It
Used.
sits on the rock,
Yes.
right? But somehow we elevated it. I don't understand. How did we elevate it so that it's not something that we're dealing with?
Chair, the managing director has taken over. Roger, do you have any more? Because I thought
Sure.
you were working on this.
I have signed some documents on behalf of the city regarding the transfer. I've been advised by Corp Counsel every time that we do sign, and I would defer to Kathleen Kelly at some point to bring the board up to date on exactly where that is.
Because my understanding is it's not anywhere right now.
Unless Dan has knowledge of that, and
Yeah.
I didn't think he would, but Kathleen Kelly, I believe, is the point attorney from Corporation Counsel.
And she's the
Kathleen
one
is
who, she was the one who was at the meeting and just shaking her head when we were talking about, that we thought it was done, but it's not done.
My understanding is it's awaiting an approval from Interior.
My understanding is it's awaiting consultation, which is really further down than Interior. But maybe we can get an update from Kathleen Kelly, because that then had the impact on the 46 kV substation, because I was supposed to be there. The HECO says now we don't need and then HECO says we have to pay $2 million for, right?
And while I get my advice from Kathleen, she may have another attorney who is actually working on this besides her, but I think she would be knowledgeable. She's probably watching us right now.
No, I'm sure
Yeah.
I'm sure she is. I was just curious because when she was shaking her head, that wasn't the reaction I thought. So I thought maybe it would be mentioned in the progress report, but it's not. Though technically it is hard. I mean, it's the operations center, which we have not transferred to DTS.
Oh, you did?
You did transfer to DTS?
Yes.
When did we transfer the whole operations center to DTS?
Around June of this year,
Before you took over operations.
right around, before we took over, but just before.
So you control the whole rock right now?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Chair.
Yes.
I have a couple questions. Staying on the subject of the rail operations center, could you talk a little bit about how do you separate the cost between Hart and the city with respect to the operations center? You know, Director Morton just mentioned that it's been transferred. Is it like a total transfer or transfer a certain percentage or?
Yeah, good question, because the Hitachi has kind of a squiggly line between design build and operations and maintenance. The original contract, the original contract was amended when Hart lost the O&M privileges. And within that amendment, it details out which pay items are design build and which ones are for operations and maintenance. And then every change order subsequent to that did the same thing. If there was, you have to define it as either a design build cost or an operations cost. And now that Hitachi and Rogers guys are out of the Rock, the same project directors over operations and design build. So it makes it even more complicated. We also have some people camped out at the Rock with Rogers guys, and then Hitachi is the majority of the people on the Rock. And they're actually managing their design build from the Rock. When I say Rock, that's the Rail Operations Center, the ROC we're talking about. And so it is very clear from a payment perspective which items are design build and which items are operation and maintenance. And that was executed in the contract and then all amendments to date. And there's actually claiming rules for each of those in the contract that show how they're going to earn the money and then which color it comes from or which bucket.
Okay,
Did that help?
so well, that helps from an explanation standpoint. So for the board to actually have something to look at, I would recommend in the next meeting, whether it'll be this committee or the full board or the finance committee, we would like a presentation on what are the major expenses that Hart is paying for at the Rock, and what are expenditures that DTS is responsible for, and also the amount of payments since we transferred the Rock to DTS. So we just want to see a bifurcation of the expenditures and for us to know that is proper.
Okay, I can do that. You're all right, Patrick, accompany me on that one?
Yeah,
Perfect,
no problem.
perfect, thank you.
Okay. One
Yeah,
other
go ahead,
question. With respect to Dillingham and the city center guideways, just your general update on, are there any properties, acquisition or right-of-ways that that are on the critical path that may prevent the underground utilities to be done on time, or even maybe for CCGS contractor to be able to do all the work in time?
Okay, so there were 2 right of entries that were on the critical path that were holding up NAN's work to a degree. Those were with HCC and then Kamehameha Schools. We've executed both of those thanks to good support and partnership from both of them. We executed them in October though, but forward looking, we have those secured. So we're actually out of NAN's way. We're still trying to. So we have a right of entry for Takara and all the critical right-of-way properties for Dillingham for the utility work.
Yeah.
So from a right-of-way perspective and access perspective, we are out of Nan's way on Dillingham. CCGS perspective, we actually just started notifying property owners about potential acquisitions for like the stations and the guideway touchdowns. So that process has just started. But you figure 18 months is your long lead to get access, and there's plenty of time for that. So hopefully there'll be no right-of-way issues on CCGS.
Is the CCGS proposal, does it talk about, some of the exceptions should we not be able to get the properties on time? Or is that something that you all negotiate somewhere down the road?
We provide them an access schedule for properties and then utilities of when they would be cleared. So basically we're saying, hey, based on Nan and Coluccio's schedule, you can have access to these areas on these dates. Based on our right-of-way acquisition schedule, you have access to these areas, these dates, and that allows the contractor to know his constraints and sequence the job like that. So then when we get the bid, we also get a baseline schedule that shows how they're going to build the job, and it has all those constraints in there. So obviously they're going to start drilling shafts in downtown because that's when Coluccio will be done. And they're going to work their way towards Dillingham because Nan won't be done till Q1 26 and start drilling shafts there. So we provide them with those date constraints and then they plan the job around it.
Okay, so the approach with building CCGS is that it's not necessarily like how we did it in the past, where we go from the west side to Aloha Stadium and to the airport and to Middle Street. So the approach to CCGS is you'll start Middle Street, but depending on the schedule, the contractor could start from, say, Civic Center, and try to meet in the middle. Is that the approach? Or wherever the schedule allows for you to just build something?
That's a good way to put it. So really it's wherever the schedule allows them to start, recognizing that the most critical element is keeping your gantries moving efficiently. You never want those things to stop. So like drilled shaft crews, you can throw another drill rig out there, throw two out there. That's never been a constraining resource. It's the gantry. It's obviously better to work from point A to point B, linear fashion like we did on the west side. Even the airport, that was the intent, and then we hit those Zone 8 delays, and we had to reload the gantry, move it. Just so you guys know, right, when I'm talking gantries, those big cranes that set the segments, just to disassemble one enough to move it costs $4 million. So that's why you got to keep those equipments moving. And so I think based on the utility work is that they would launch a gantry in downtown, work their way towards Civic Center, and then launch another gantry about 8 to 10 months later downtown and work towards Middle Street.
Okay,
That's how I see it working.
Okay, so
But they can do anything that they want. It's their means and methods. That's just how that's my best guess at efficiently building this thing.
So I appreciate that. My concern is the risk of doing this. In the unlikely scenario that we have insufficient funds, right? So now you really have a non-usable system if you're just building it piecemeal, right? At least if you go from Middle Street and you build in a linear fashion, let's just assume in the unlikely scenario that we are short of funds, right? You could stop at some place and still maybe have a usable system. But if we start from, west to east and have a portion from east to west, and there's nothing in between, eventually you have to meet, right? So the risk is in the unlikely scenario that we don't have sufficient funding. How do we address that type of risk? I mean, other than saying, well, we'll have more than enough money to do it.
That's a tough one because our commitment to the FTAs that we're going to build through Civic Center, we're
Well, that's
funded
true,
and
but our
committed
commitment to the
through.
FTA was to go all the way to Ala Moana as well. So,
Agreed, but
things
they're
could change, right?
right. I'm just reinstating our commitment to the FTA as they're watching these things and we're finalizing our FFTA process. So that's our commitment. If there is funding capacity issues, that would be addressed when we're going to award the contract, not as we're approaching it. Because if we award the contract, we're going to guarantee them a scope of work. And if we decide 3 years into it that we don't have enough money, that creates a lot more risks and costs, as you're saying, right? And so I don't know that that's a road that I can even
Anyway,
discuss
I
that
don't want to belabor the point. It's just something to think about if you're going to use that approach, just in case in the unlikely scenario,
So
the
I think-
unexpected
Let me address that
happen,
better,
right?
Robert, and sorry for being sloppy with that. So I don't think we would run out of money for CCGS. We would run out of money on the remaining scope items outside of CCGS, meaning the ramp, the transit center, the parking rides, the Camp Highway 138 KV. We have enough money to build CCGS, but we still have $500 to $800 million programmed on other work, right? So I think we'd actually tap into that funding, and it wouldn't reduce the CCGS footprint.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks.
Members, any other questions? None? I have a few, Nate. Kind of circling back to the rock issue. So are there any issues related to that particular issue that impacts construction going
No.
forward?
No, there's no that impact construction nor O&M to this point. So I think from like a heart perspective, there's very, very little to no risk that something would upset that deal and upset our construction.
Okay, thanks. And then looking at the risk chart, I think it's like page, what is that, 40, 39? Focusing more on the red risks. You mentioned some long lead items, some design issues, some labor issues. Can you kind of just kind of briefly expand on some of what you see might be the concerns there? I'm
Yeah,
focusing.
absolutely. So thanks for pointing that out. I wanted to pause and point that out to Michelle that this risk update on page 38 reflects that heat map. I'd asked the team to put together a draft heat map for the risk. I didn't know we were going to incorporate it into this progress report as such, but we did. So I apologize for the bait and switch there. But instead of that top 10 chart, this is that risk heat map, which Michelle brought up. She has seen and found beneficial. There's still the top 10 kind of underneath it. But this is different way to portray that information than you guys have seen. Once you look at it, we can talk, figure out if we want to keep it or not, just go from there. But thanks for bringing that up, Kika. So if you want to go through the risks here, so the biggest risk from a time perspective, and that's on page 39, that's what you were getting at, Kika. So here is our top risk there. They're identified below, and then they're shown on the heat map above. Our number one risk there is that CCOR long lead items. I would like to highlight that that's a September risk, that there's long lead items for CCOR 3 that will delay that schedule. The October update is HECO has informally agreed to let us use those 12 kV conductors and replace that with material we ordered. So HECO, I think in October, has allowed us to retire that number one risk by using their material on hand. So that was good. And then if you look at the number 3 risk, so that talks about 4E scope of work. And that talks about, there's a potential for like a 6-month expected value delay. What that risk is, Kika, it's all our high voltage electricians and linemen have so much work elsewhere that it's going to be hard to meet the schedule for 4E. So that's what that risk entails. And then, Robert, to your question, risk number 7 is the Dillingham property acquisitions and utility easements, right? So that's our 7th largest schedule risk, which should be reduced in October two due to those right entries I talked about. And you have to remember that if it's a top 10 schedule risk, it most likely hits the cost side too. Like anything that delays the project's critical path obviously has those time related costs. So a lot of time the schedule risks also show up as our top cost risk. The heat map, I guess, Kika, just quickly to explain it, bottom left, the most green is the best. The top right, the red is the worst. And then as these risks fall, right, that's where they fall on. So I think you're looking for outliers that hit like a very high probability, and probability is on the vertical axis on the left side, and impacts on the horizontal axis there below. You're looking for things that are either very high probability and a very high impact, or very low probability, very high impact, etc. So all of our top 10s appropriately fall outside of the greens, and only one falls in the yellow, the rest are orange and red.
So on page 40, I'm actually looking, I think, at the top 10.
Yeah.
I'm old school.
Ah,
So I like looking at the descriptions and the summaries. So you mentioned on DBOM 920 some labor shortage concerns. You mentioned 4E some cabling, splicing, testing concerns. So I mean, are we anticipating? Can you explain what kind of labor shortages you're referring to and how we're planning on addressing those? And as far as the cable splicing, testing, and whatnot, can you kind of a little bit expand on that and what your concerns are?
yes, sir. For let's talk 4E first, for electrical. So that is your high voltage guys, the linemen out there. If you rewind a year ago, a lineman was probably the highest and most sought after expertise around the West Coast after the PG&E wildfires and the infrastructure rebuild there. So basically, linemen are in high demand, and linemen are the skill set that we need to deliver 4E. We've always had a problem there, and that's before what happened on Maui. So just the expectation is that specialty trade gets even more constrained because there's so much work going on and it's hard to keep up. From a just overall resource perspective, we've seen a lot. We've always had resource constraints that don't allow us to build at the pace that other agencies do on the mainland. That's demographic based, but there's also, and that has gotten better from an industry perspective over the last year, but worse from an owner's perspective, meaning that I think I saw something from ASCE that's projecting by 2050, there'll be a $500 million shortage of construction jobs. And then here on island, we have the NAVFAC, we have all those projects going on that's competing for our concrete and steel resources. We're actually losing people every single day to those competing projects because they're offering a nice sign-on bonus and some overtime. So those are just real resource considerations that we have to take into account in our planning.
So what are we trying to do to alleviate or mitigate?
So really the only thing that we can do with the electrical work is get that procurement out as soon as possible. We're opening the bids on November 15th in 2 weeks. The work's not expected to start till January of 25. That allows us to execute a contract with the electrical contractors, order material ahead of time, and gives them a year and a half to plan their resources adequately, where hopefully they can just get in, punch out our work, and move on. So that was our mitigation attempt, try to get it out as early as possible to the industry, try to maximize the efficiency between NAN's infrastructure work and the electrical guys. Like the electrical specialty contractors will come in and tell you, we don't want to design traffic control plans, we don't want to go to the city and get our permits, we don't know how to do the engineering drawings associated with that. So we said, you know what, we'll create an allowance item and an agreement where you use our existing MOT staff to develop your permits. We'll actually pull and hold the permits, and then you guys just acquire them once we execute the contract. So basically, we took all the work the specialty trades don't want to do, and said, all right, we'll self-perform it, and then just hand you the work you guys are capable and want to do. And they said, all right, we appreciate that. That helps the overall schedule. So basically, we're trying to do everything we can to mitigate that, but there's not much you can do.
And this is, I'm not sure if you guys have already thought about this, but you maybe, have you guys considered sitting down with maybe the contractors and the labor organizations to kind of get ahead of it, or
Would love to do that. Would love to do that. So we've sat down with each of the contractors and we've talked through before the bids went out. Before the procurement went out. We sat down with all of the local contractors here that we have relationships with, just to understand what their workloads are, what the capacity is, and what their preferred planning would be. I have not sat with the labor force and the unions, and would love to do that, to understand globally how we're going to do it. We've had one meeting with the Navy so far on NAVFAC, and also trying to provoke more meetings with them to stay coordinated. But a holistic statewide plan, certainly we should talk about.
it might be worthwhile to coordinate a meeting with the contractors involved, at least the generals and the various labor organizations, just because I think labor is going to become more and more of an issue because of Maui and because of the harbor and whatnot. So it might be good just so that the labor organizations that are probably going to be tasked with, getting the workforce needed to do a lot of this work, they could kind of be given a heads up and understand what their needs are. That might actually be helpful all the way around, I think, for everyone. Yeah.
And we could even break it down by skilled trade, by labor type, by quarter, or like by year, and actually show like what a resource plan looks like over the next 8 years to complete our schedule. We have all that data.
Okay. Well, let us know how we can. Okay.
Tempo, I will.
Sounds
Thank you.
good. And then on page 2, I think we talked about this before, but DBB 511 CCUR 4, that goes into the commitments that were made as far as crews and shifts and whatnot. Has that been addressed, or
Where are you looking at, Kika? I'm sorry.
page 41 CCUR 4 Dillingham contractor performance? It's about halfway down. It talks about the work plan.
Yeah, so we keep tabs on that every single day. And essentially what this risk is saying, it said, all right, due to the project schedule, we put out this project at 38 months. Contractor's telling us that it should be 48 months. So he's included 10 months of acceleration and premium costs in his bid to get it to 38 months. And that premium is 9 crews, 2 shifts a day, 7 days a week. And that's what we track to. So if NAN does not put that amount of labor out on the ground, NAN cannot come after Hart for a delay, a compensable time delay. And that's how we track it. And so every day we track the amount of labor NAN has out on site, because that's our defense card when he comes back and say, hey, you owe me 6 months of time and money associated with it. Because we say, you committed to provide us this level of labor, and anything below that is considered a delay on NAN's part. So that we actually track it every day, Kika. They're providing enough labor to meet their schedule, and they have proven that time and time again. They're not providing this level of labor, but they're providing enough to meet their current schedule, which is good enough for now. But that's something we have to continuously watch every day.
Okay.
Does that answer it?
Are there any incentives if they actually get ahead of schedule?
Yeah, we have a $100,000 a day incentive for every day they finish ahead of schedule. And I believe it maxes out at 5 million or 10 million, something like that. Like it's like a 60-day max or something. So if they finish 60 days early, they'd get $100,000 a day.
So they committed to 600 feet a week.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is if they exceed that and finish,
Yes.
that there's some incentives for them.
Yes.
Okay.
But hey, they gave up, you know, they've communicated that they're not chasing that they're just trying to finish on the date because it's highly unlikely they'll beat it.
Okay. I think that is it. Michelle, you have any questions?
I have a couple of comments about the risk. I like the heat map personally, but if nobody else likes it, then, you know, I mean, I can like do it old school, Kika's way. You know, there was a couple of things, and I think Kika gave you some good ideas, but you had mentioned that, you know, a risk turns into an issue when you can't, you know, when it's realized basically, and you can't do anything about it, right? So, I guess my question is, for these top 10, you actually keep track and have meetings about mitigated and everything else. Kind of an update, if there is one, of change, right? So if we could get a baseline, like you could do all 10, and you could show what the risk is, what the impact is, what you're working on doing to mitigate it, and dates that you think are appropriate. And then when something changes, you could like show an updated chart instead of just describing the risk, but also adding the information about, you know, mitigation strategies and when we should be looking to identify when you might be able to do some risk mitigation. You know what I'm talking about?
I think so. So I think you're looking at like a roadmap of your top risks and what's done every month from a management perspective to try to minimize, mitigate, reduce, retire, or realize those risks.
Right. So, I mean, I'm only looking for something that changed, right? So if the risk stayed the same and the mitigation strategy stayed the same and you didn't work on it or like nothing changed that month, then, you know, okay, just leave it. But if something changed or you came up with some great idea or you found some way to, you know, pay somebody else or whatever, then it would be worth like not putting it into the report, but maybe reporting it during the PMOC so that everybody kind of gets the feel for, you know, kind of like the work that's getting done to, because there's a lot of work that gets done in risk management, right?
Yes. So, yes, I completely agree with you and can do that. And if you look at current status risk mitigation, that's the intent of that box. Although I am not saying that this satisfies what you're asking for, Michelle, because it doesn't. It's kind of a pencil whip that the team does every month. You can see 914, no change, 914, no change. The intent of that is to record monthly what we're doing to evolve that risk. Now that Corey gentleman's on board, Director of Project Controls, he can spend a little bit more time with the risk folks and ensure that we properly document the intent of that. Because you're exactly right, that's what it's for, although it's not being used, but with the addition of Corey, he can make sure that it's used adequately. So, Michelle, if you agree, I'd like to take that box and expand on it and provide you guys with a sort of a written statement every month for each of the risks of what we're doing for it.
We lost you, Michelle. There you are.
So I guess I'm thinking that only if a risk change, but if a risk is no change, we move into next year, it'd be good to start, because we're going to end up putting a lot more risks as we start the city center guideway. It's going to be like, oh my God, I've got like 18 in the red, right? And there'll be, some of them will be small and you work them off. Some will be big. So, and it's worthwhile to get people to be able to look at the new information. So I'm just making a comment. I'm not asking for anything, but I think you guys are on the right track of using that box in a more useful way and then being able to articulate the changes that are occurring because of risk management. Because I think, you know, when people look at the project from really far away, it's sort of like, yeah, this got screwed up. And you don't recognize like all the work that went into trying not to get it to screw up, but then like something happened anyway, right? Or you got hit sideways and like it was just an issue, right? So So I think being able to show those at the committee meetings and, you know, maybe a few of the really top ones to the board could be useful in letting everybody know that we're really trying hard to manage the project in a responsible way. And that all of these things are what the Heart staff does in working with the contractor to help them, you know, mitigate these risks, and that the government has tools to be able to do that.
Yeah, good points, and we will add and beef up those sections and then report on it a couple months to come.
Okay. Thanks, Michelle.
I'll follow up.
Yeah,
if
go
I
ahead,
could.
Chair.
Okay,
Well,
I
thank
like
you.
the risk heat map. But the only thing that I'm trying to figure out is we go from dark green to green. Green is low, dark green must be 0. And then we go medium with the yellow, then we go orange, and then we go red, right? So I'm trying to figure out, especially when most of these dots fall in orange, which seems to be not quite red. And I was looking at what it meant below in terms of risk scoring. So medium is, like, for example, probability greater than 10 but less than 50. High is greater than 50, right? Red would be greater than 50. So the orange has got to be somewhere between greater than 10% but less than 50% probability, I would assume.
We should define what orange means.
Because, well, only because the majority of the risk is in orange, which to me logically would tell me, hey, it's not red, so maybe it's better. It's not quite yellow, but some of it is in yellow, but most of it is in orange, which would seem that in terms of our risk, we're doing a not bad job, I'm assuming, because it's not red. So that's why I said I like the heat map, only because what it's done is it's basically shown me that our risk status is not what some of us may think, and you guys are doing a not bad job. But you got to tell me what orange is.
Okay, 10-4. We'll define orange, and then you're exactly right, Chair. Our goal is to keep trying to push all those risks back to close to green as possible.
And it looks like it's being done. So I would hate to have all the risks seem to be in the red when it really isn't. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
Chair. You can call it the orange then.
10-4.
Now I thought you were going to say pumpkin.
Yes.
Nate, on page 22 on the intergovernmental agreements, there are 20, of which one has been completed. Just a general comment on those from you, if you don't mind, but also, is there an update on the status of the DAGS agreement for stadium?
So our 2 agreements that we handed over to you in a temporary state, as right of entries for the stadium and then for DR Horton, both of those have been extended. I think DR
24.
Horton was extended till October of 24.
Yeah.
And then the what was the other stadium? December 15th was the stadium.
Yeah.
So
Coming up pretty soon.
It's coming up pretty soon. We're trying to lock in permanent agreements with that, but those were both extended.
Yeah. The other general comment was with 19 open agreements. Who on your staff is point for trying to work out these agreements? That's a lot of work and a lot of lawyers.
Yeah, we have one city staffer that is solely responsible for managing our agreements, and then we have a consultant support to her who is an attorney and an engineer, and he's responsible for supporting from like a legal perspective.
Yeah.
And so there is a dedicated individual, probably 1.25 or 1.5 FTEs related to it.
Yeah. So some of them have transit implications and others don't. Do you have enough expertise on the transit side so that you're making sure the agreements that are finally negotiated actually work?
Yeah, so the agreement, our Krista, our TPAR director, is always party to those agreements, and then Matt Scanlon, our director of design and construction. And then I know that they route through Patrick and your team to ensure that like, the O&M implications are covered as well. My experience with these agreements is that they do not move very quick and just
That's what it
come
looks
and
like, yeah.
surprise you. Yeah. So there's agreements that are in place that have a termination date that have to be continuously renewed, and then there's agreements that have not been finalized for a long time that have been in the works for years. And I don't see a end date to that process. You know, I think that's something that just keeps going and going.
But you didn't have it in your heat map as any kind of risk or anything, right?
Fair, yeah. It was very surprising to us that the land agreements needed for opening weren't locked into place till a couple months before. You know, that could have been done years ago, but lessons learned there. Segment two, we're in a lot better shape there because it goes through HDOT DTS property for the majority. And then all the agreements should be in place, so that shouldn't be a problem.
Thank you. Just to reconfirm, if I heard you correctly earlier, the long lead items have been mitigated.
As of yesterday, that was the informal agreement with HECO that they could provide what we needed.
Okay. And then the as far as the differing conditions, site conditions, communications, I guess back and forth with the utility RFIs, how has that been?
To be very realistic, we're about 50% of plan accuracy out there. I mean, and 50% of the lines are where they're shown on the plans, and 50% are not. That's not a fault of any one person, but you know, it's just as-builts don't document exactly where those are. The one call doesn't exactly hit it as well. So managing differing site conditions is an absolute occurrence. So it's already happening and it's going to continue happening, but we have a good process to do so. So we meet weekly between contractors, Hart, and the designer of record, who is AECom, and we have a threshold. Some variances or deviations from the plans, the field guys can approve. When it reaches a certain threshold, it goes to the lead engineers to approve. If it goes above that threshold, it then goes to like the resident engineer and the contractor to approve. Gets beyond that, that's when we have to include the designer of record, AECom, to redesign plan sheets. But we've got the process down where we're in the 1 or 2 week from a variance finding to a complete redesign and contractor resuming work. So it's going pretty good.
Who issues the final approval?
We do. So AECom marks up the plans. So basically, contractor sends it to us. We fact check it, ensure we agree and it's appropriate. We send it to AECom. AECom looks at it, does the redesign, gets the third party approvals, sends it back to us. We look at it, we do the quality oversight, then we pass it to the contractor.
What about the site inspection?
The site inspection, yeah, it happens through that process. So usually our guys verify with the contractor's guys about what was discovered in the field. And then it's our guys, the contractor guys, see full circle all the way around to ensure, all right, the new design was put into place, work was installed per the new plan, and they sign off on it and it's good.
Who does the final inspection?
We do. And then, so we ultimately do the final inspection and acceptance in most cases. And then in some cases, the third party utilities do their own acceptance. But there's different, so we accept the infrastructure, which is the duct bank and conduit, and we accept that through what they call mandrel testing, which is sticking this little tube through the conduit, it slides all the way through, it shows that there's no bends beyond the desired radius and that there's no blockages or kinks or anything like that. We accept the infrastructure, then they actually pull the cables through that infrastructure, connect it, and then that's where the third parties typically accept that infrastructure.
Okay. All right. If there's any other questions? Nope. Okay. Appreciate it, Nate. And there aren't any other items on the agenda, so this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, the Finance Committee. We will start the meeting is 9:40, and we're gonna take roll. Kika
Present.
Bukowski,
Present.
Roger Morton,
Present.
Michelle Chun Boone Grabber,
Present.
Edwin Young,
Present.
and I'm Robert Yu, and obviously I am here. So, agenda item number 2, are there any public testimonies on all the agendas items? Okay, hearing none. We could go to agenda item number 3, which is the cash flow report, Brent. Brent, thank you.
Morning, Brent Lewis, Deputy Director of Budget and Finance. Before you is the annual and monthly cash flow reports, which includes the September actuals. This report is very similar to the August cash flow reports with some minimal changes. Principally, the bond repayment schedule has been updated to reflect the BFS approved 2023 D bond and interest repayments.
Before we ask questions, I want to acknowledge Chair Musa is also at this meeting, and I didn't do that earlier. So, any questions on the cash flow report?
Any highlights on it at all? Any issues or concerns?
Not for September, certainly no concerns, but no real highlights. It's very similar. Again, it's the debt schedule that has changed and lower than it was before, so that's a highlight.
Any other questions from members?
I don't.
Chair.
So how was our funding in terms of basically income being received from GET, TAT, and all the rest of the funds? How was that actually, the actuals to the projected? How does that compare?
Well, the GT, TAT are coming in a little higher than the projections. I don't have the projections here with me, but no, they're coming in strong.
And this is, you're talking about September, right?
Correct. What we've received, we haven't yet received the GT, TAT from the first quarter, so this reflects what was received in August.
Oh, I see. So the August actuals are coming in as expected as well?
They did, yes.
Did they come in higher or did they come in as expected?
Higher.
Higher.
Yep.
And of course, I'm asking that because of the fire. So the Haina fire did not seem to impact the amount of money we received. I think where we would probably see it would be in the TAT. So the TAT was fine.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr.
Any other questions? Brent, so I know at the last finance committee meeting, you all did a presentation on projected compared to actual GET and TAT. So I think if possible, every finance committee meeting, just so that we could answer this question in advance, if you could just do that presentation.
Of course.
If updated information is available.
Well, so as a reminder, the GAT, TAT doesn't come in every month
Correct.
in terms of received.
Yes.
So-
Right. So whenever you have that information, then
Absolutely.
just, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Bob, are you asking for a presentation or the numbers are in the spreadsheet?
The numbers on the spreadsheet, but it doesn't really compare
It
Um,
does, right?
actual to projected. So I'm looking at the first quarter of 2020. So I'm looking at first quarter of 2024. I see actual,
Yes.
right? But I don't see any projected. And maybe that's all you have to put in. You see that column is blank.
It comes in quarterly.
Yeah, but there's actual numbers, right? So the actual numbers are 117 million 446,000, right? That's the actual number. But there's nothing to compare it to because you have a column that says projected.
By month, correct.
Yeah, so I think that's what kind of asking. So that column should be blank.
September.
No, just
Oh, projected.
yeah.
Yes, in this particular case, because the actuals for the TET and GET won't be received until October.
I guess what he's asking,
Yeah, go ahead.
I think what Robert's asking for is what the projected for September was.
Well, or for the quarter, because the September there are no actuals
Yeah.
because it doesn't come in. You know, it came in August.
There's no actuals, but were there projected? I mean, in order to get a
No, because
projected,
it's quarterly.
right, but in order to get a projection for the quarter, I mean, do you have projections for the quarter?
Well, what we could do then is rather than for September, which should be blank, we can have a quarterly projection, which includes what was received in this case August, and then would be the projection for the whole quarter because it
Yeah.
won't come in September.
Because
But-
I think in the past, we've had meetings and I think it was with previous, maybe Dean. When I was the chair of finance, I was asking for a separate report of actuals versus projections and I think what Robert's point is to kind of preempt or, provide the information beforehand so we don't have to ask for it, is what is the actuals that you're showing versus what we projected. So it kind of gives us an idea of how we're doing, if we're collecting more or collecting less, or
Well, we can absolutely do that.
if it's, yeah.
Yeah.
Not a
So
problem.
yeah, so Brent, you already have the information. So
Right.
just going left to right, you have 209,000 plus 72,884. That comes to 73,093, right? On the left-hand column, on the monthly, right? So that's the actual. And I think all we're asking is what was the projected? That's related to this actual number. And you have the column here.
Right. No, I understand. We can do that.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So one other thing, and I think I asked this before and Nate answered it, and I'm not really sure I agree or understand the answer. So I'm looking at CCUR specifically because that's the biggest contract available now, which is DBB 511. So I'm looking at the expenditures. So CCUR downtown is supposed to end in September 2024, and CCUR Dillingham is scheduled to be completed December 2025. So when I'm looking at the annual projections, which is what I have is second to the last page, right? Oh, third to the last page. I'm looking at the city center utility relocation. I see 229 million in fiscal year 2025 and 238 million in fiscal year 2026. Now, fiscal year 2026 encompasses December 2025, right? And also, I see 134 million in fiscal year 2027. Now, I'm just looking at that's a year and a half after it's scheduled to be completed. And if I just take 50% of fiscal year 26 from January to June of 26, that would be half of 238 million, right? So we're looking at 240 million that we're projecting to spend after the project should be completed in December 2025. Now, my concern is either we are way under budget, or from a number standpoint, we're not on schedule because you're still projecting to spend 240 million after you're projected to be completed in December 2025. So I mean, that's really my question.
Yeah, good question. So the NAN contract's written to December of 25. The work is expected to go through February of 26. So we got ourselves some internal float there. We're hoping NAN does finish in 25, but our master schedule and our need by date is 26, quarter one of 26. That's reflected in our master schedule too. And then, so that would be completion quarter one of 2026. And then you expect that that's an accrual. So about 3 months later, you'd start getting substantial completion cash payments. That's around June, July timeframe, already kind of close to bumps us into the next fiscal year, right? And then hopefully there's about 6 months worth of work and close that thing up and we button it up and it won't touch fiscal year 27, like you said. There's a chance that it may, but you're right. I mean, it could very easily happen all in fiscal year 26. It very well could.
Okay, so just based on what you said, if we're not going to touch fiscal year 27, then the $134 million shouldn't
We can move
be
it up.
there, right?
Yeah. I mean, we can move it up. It's just
No. What I'm wondering is, first, is the projection reasonable? Secondly, if it is reasonable, I'm not sure I totally agree that after completion in December 25 or February 26, you're going to have to spend another $200 million or a little bit more, even with deferred payments, right? I can't imagine payments to be deferred by 8 months,
No, I think
or even 16 months.
Yeah, I mean that's there's when it comes to release of retention, that's a big cash payment at the end.
Okay, retention is 10%,
Right.
$40 million.
Exactly.
Okay, but we're looking at 240 million, right?
Yeah, I think fiscal year
I'm just
20.
looking at based on
Yeah, I think
what's
fiscal year
the completion
26.
day.
I think fiscal year 26 is very realistic that we'd be spending money there. Fiscal year 27, if things go well, we won't be spending any money in there. So we can reflect it as such.
Let me just understand. Fiscal year 27 is June or July 1st of 26.
6 to June 27, and that's why it's
Of
over 2 years
27.
later.
But the CCR4 is slated for
Quarter one,
end
26.
or beginning of
Quarter
20
one, 26 is when we're projecting the work to be complete.
Yeah.
Their contract December 25.
Yeah.
So quarter one, 26, 3 months of a lag payment, you're already at April or May. You're only 2 months from the next fiscal year.
Yeah, I'm just taking your numbers and your presentation in the progress report and asking the questions. I'm not, trying to put dates or numbers anywhere. So anyway, maybe y'all could just take a look at it to see whether the projections are reasonable.
It's a matter of, so in construction, you have your early dates and your late dates, right? Your early dates are if everything happened according to plan, you'd finish on this date. Your late dates are if everything happened the latest day it possibly could and you'd still finish on plan. And so your projections are always between those two dates, And so this is more towards the later date. If we want to be more aggressive with our cash spending in this model, we can move it all into fiscal year 26. That might be a better way to prepare ourselves for
Yeah,
that.
Nate, I'm not actually asking for you to be more aggressive in the spending. Your spending is based on the value of work performed, right?
Right.
The contractor do all the work, your field manager validates the work, and whatever is completed, and that's what we pay. So there's really nothing aggressive about it. Aggressive spending is when you ask the contractor to do a lot more to try to finish early, right?
Acceleration.
Which is not what we're asking.
Correct. And that's not what I'm saying either.
And so it goes back to my question is pretty basic. If in your monthly progress report, the completion date is December 2025, and you said now it could be February 2026. Either way, that 2 months is not going to make a huge difference. I'm still looking at in your cash projection that you estimate to spend 238 million in the fiscal year that the project is going to be completed. On top of that, in fiscal year 27, which is from July 26 to June 27, you're still projecting to spend $134.5 million. So that really lies my question, right? You know, is this reasonable that we're gonna spend all that money a year and a half after the project is supposed to be completed? I'm looking at the Airport Guideway and Station, right? DB 450 is supposed to finish in 2024, right? February 2024. That's what the progress report says. So if you look at fiscal year 25 and 26 and beyond, there's really no expenditures assigned to this contract. So there's no 4-month delay in payment. There's no other things to wrap up. Maybe there is, but it's not going to be in the neighborhood of $62 million, right? So I'm just trying to compare the approach you all use for the Airport Guideway and Station and the way it's projected and presented as opposed to the City Center Guideway and Station. I'm trying to just compare the two explanations. And
so DB 450, there's only 5% of the work remaining. We got a pretty good projection of work complete. You are right, though. I think DB 450 should trail into fiscal year 25. We're not going to make all those payments in next fiscal year. Because even if they get complete in February of 2029, I'm sorry, they get complete February 29th of 24, as per our agreement, we're still, I mean, we'll be lucky to make those payments before the end of that fiscal year.
no, that's true. I
So I do
understand.
agree, some should tail in there. CCUR is a different ballgame. There's 80-90% left of the work, and there's a lot higher likelihood of that work slipping than the 5% remaining of DB 450. And just so we know, the early date right now, or the planned date for Dillingham completion is February of 2026, right? And that's in order, that's the early date trail that gets us to like an August of 2029 finish date. I think even if we
Oh, Chris,
even if
you're
we
right there.
finished,
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so that's tracking early days, right? So if we finish Dillingham February of 26 and start drilling shafts that same day, and we spend 2 years of guideway, and we build the station, and everything happens according to plan, we would finish August of 29, right? And all that's dependent on Dillingham finishing February 26.
Right, but you
Now-
can just change the contract on me because the other contract that you just mentioned is the CCGS, right? It's not the, I'm just looking at the
So there's an early
CCUR.
path that gets us to our base schedule date, which is our early date. And I think it's August of 2029 or something, right? We know that's not realistic. That's why FTA makes you do a risk-adjusted schedule to establish a revenue service date. And that risk-adjusted schedule is March of 2031. So our two goalposts are August of 2029 and March of 2031, right? That's success for us. Now that February of 26 date, and when I talk about the early path, that's everything happening according to that early date, as if nothing was delayed, gets us to August of 29. Realistically, we're going to encounter delays along the way. Dillingham's not going to finish till June of 2026. Chance. All of that, as long as we can thread the needle and finish before March of 2031, like that's a success. We fulfilled our commitment. And so these projections for each of those major contracts fall somewhere within that range of projection. So there's a little bit of estimating work and guessing that goes into these. So I'm saying it's realistic for CCR that we would spend money in 27, but it's also realistic that we wouldn't. And so we need to decide if we want to be conservative with how we project that contract or we want to be aggressive.
Yeah, Chair has a question, but
Go ahead.
but not being an engineer, you know, I admit I'm not an engineer. I'm just looking at what is provided to me. You know, you kind of commingling the entire project as opposed to the question with respect to the work that's going to be done for CCUR. And you know, I'll be honest with you, Nate. I'm not really sure I could buy into your argument just based on what is here and what's in the monthly progress report.
But
But
we
anyway,
should spend some time.
Chair.
We should spend some time together
Yes.
to ensure that that statement doesn't need to be said again.
Yes.
Let me, I'm with him. I'm, okay, so let's go back to what you said about airports, the AGS, as we call it. Like you said, some of it will tail into 2025, fiscal year 2025, okay? The question is, what will tail into 2025? Is the 62,478,000, which is projected to be in fiscal year 2024, is part of that figure going to tail into 2025? Or are you saying that there's going to be some more money, because that's not my understanding, that we're going to have to come up with in fiscal year 2025?
So if the global settlement, we ink the deal, right? That's 990 million estimate at completion. That is remaining payment of roughly 62 million, we'll say.
Right.
The agreement was they get 50% of that up front.
Right.
So the pot of money sitting there at the end is going to be somewhere between probably 10 to 20 million, right?
Okay.
Because you'll probably have two stations to punch out. And so we're sitting at 10 to 20 million dollars left. If they finish on February 29th per the agreement, they'd be eligible to get that, we'll call it 20 million.
Right, okay.
Now, it takes them 30 days to process a payout. We're going to receive it at the end of March.
Right.
It takes us 30 days to process and pay that.
Okay.
So that would be the end of April.
Just stop there. The question is everything that's going to be paid out potentially in 2025 covered by the 62 million?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's what I'm getting at. And I think that's what Robert's getting at. So even if we
I don't
tail
think that's
in,
what
it's the
Robert's getting
same, it's the same number, 62 million.
Yes.
The difference as I see it is when we're looking at the CCUR situation, it's expected to finish sometime in February or so of the, within the fiscal year 2026. Correct? That's what you said
Yes.
earlier,
Yes.
right? But what you have tailing into fiscal year 2027 is 134 million, which is more than half of what you paid in 2026. So the question is the total amount of the project equivalent to 238,488,000 plus 134,512,000? In other words, making it comparable to AGS of the 62,478, or are you saying, and that's why the 134 is problematic to me, because even if you tail in, if we use the concept of tailing in as we defined it in AGS, so 62 million may tail in to 2025, but it's still covered by the 62 million.
100%. So that's
Right.
all covered by the contract value.
Okay,
Yes.
so the 238,488, right?
Yes.
That's for fiscal year 26, which this contract is expected to end. Okay?
Yes.
So if you're gonna tail in, I expected you consistent in the use of the terms, you're gonna tail in the 238 into fiscal year 27. However, your tailing in is an additional 134 million.
No, so I'm confirming all of those numbers equal the estimate at completion. So none of that is to indicate a cost overrun. Absolutely. What that does indicate, and both you picked it up, is that most likely that contract will finish beyond the contract date. You guys
So-
are both picking that up, and that's exactly what this is showing. But it is at the contract value beyond the contract date, which is the most likely scenario, realistically.
So what you're saying is that, so what you were talking about earlier is that if it is a tail in into 2027 fiscal year, you would have to put the 134,512 to be consistent in the way we're using that, you're using that word, into the 238,488.
Right. Most likely, well, if we're going to pretend like we're all going to finish on contract, which could still happen, and we're going to put our blinders on, that 134 should bump over one fiscal year and be added to that 238.
Right.
Right.
That's what you're saying.
Yes, but there is.
Or you have to not use the word tail in.
Okay.
That the probabilities that we will not finish in February 2026.
Yes.
Is what you're saying,
That's exactly what I'm saying.
right?
Right. but the contract value, these equate the contract value. So it's not representing costs above and beyond the EAC. What this is representing is that there's a likelihood that CCUR Dillingham will complete after the schedule.
Oh, okay, so
So
go
may-
ahead. I think I
sorry.
understand now.
Yes, we understand, but if you're gonna move the 134,500,000 to 2026, then 2026 really has almost 400 million, right? So how could a contract, at the end of the contract, you literally spending more in the last year than the previous 2 years? Now,
Would it make sense, right? That's why it's in the next fiscal year.
Well-
So contracts almost always follow a bell curve. They're always like that. When you look at it periodically, cumulatively, it's always an S curve, no matter what. So exactly what you're describing is true. They don't earn as much as they do in the middle years, at the first year or the end year. And so that's what I'm representing here. It doesn't follow the same methodology as airport because realistically, there's so many more unknowns on CCR and we just embark in. I do think there's a high likelihood that CCR will finish behind schedule.
but the bell curve is like this,
But
right?
the bell curve it's
Fiscal,
always going to be that way.
fiscal year 2026 is at the end of the bell curve, right?
Not
So-
according to this. And I didn't say I'm going to move 134. I said we could if we wanted to be aggressive with our cash balance, we could move that money in there. But I think more realistically, it probably won't be 134. It might be like 60 million, 40 million. Some of it will probably be spent in fiscal year 27 due to delays and retention. And then you got to battle out the claim. You got to go through all that. Let's take AGS for example. Their contract completion date was a long time ago, right? And so back 5 years ago, if we would have projected they'd end on the contract, I don't think that'd be a realistic projection. And that's essentially what we're trying to do with CCY.
Chair.
Kika, go ahead.
Yeah, so, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the question I heard was, are your projections reasonable? And based on what I'm hearing you say, your projections are based on the reasonable anticipation that CCUR has a higher risk of delays on the project because of the inherent risks of the project itself. So your projections are referenced here based on that higher risk.
Yes, that's correct.
So in your opinion, are these projections reasonable
Yes.
based on the risk?
Yes.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Otherwise, it would not be arguing as such. And I don't mean to be abrasive on that, Robert, but it's very important that you believe that I take my projections seriously. And I can speak to it, but there is a range of projections. There's always a range, and it's okay to have differing of opinions around those projections.
Yeah. No. I'm not doubting your projection or doubting your answer. I just have a hard time coming to grips with the last year, the completion year of your contract. You are allocating almost 50% of the entire contract project cost for CCUR in the last fiscal year or the last fiscal year and a half. And really, that is what I have a hard time grasping.
And that's reasonable. But I think that's something where maybe we can adjust our projections where everyone's a little bit more comfortable with it.
I don't want to be comfortable with it. I want it to be realistic. If this is realistic, then that's cool. Then you don't have to make any changes. I'm just asking questions of what you presented. If what you presented is reasonable, then you don't have to change anything. Yeah, and I'm not asking you to change anything if you think it's reasonable. I'm just asking the question. Yeah.
I have to say, I don't think it's reasonable, Nate. And the reason I don't think it's reasonable is because I find it difficult that at the tail end of a contract of this size, that you're going to be looking at a projection of almost 50%, more than 50% of the prior year, but it's the end year. You know, that's what, if you're looking at 40 or 60 million, I would agree with you. I think that would be a reasonable tail end. But 134 million is, in my opinion, and I'm not you, you're the engineer, that seems like given the history of the project as we know it today, that seems like a huge amount when we're tailing in with a projection end date of February of the prior year. So that's my concern in this figure as to how do we get a tail end of 134 million when, as we said earlier, we're using AGS. And yes, that's what I said, consistent use of the word, we're tailing into the end, then let's be consistent so that we understand, us non-engineers understand what it means to have this. And I agree, it's a bell curve and it's towards the end, but we're towards the end.
So I appreciate that input and acknowledge that I'm going to make some adjustments there on the tail end to maybe make it as more realistic based on everything we know now. So I think next month I'll leave maybe 60 million in fiscal year 27 and bump the rest and make it a smooth bell curve there in the other years.
Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Kika.
So I agree with what I believe Robert said, yeah, is don't adjust your numbers based on what you think we want to see. I feel comfortable in your numbers based on what you see in the field and what you know as far as probability of delays and those types of things. So I don't, I hope you don't feel the need to adjust just because we are saying that we're making the comments we're making here today. If you feel comfortable in your numbers, Nate, based on what you know in the field and the probability of delays on this project, and you can justify it, I mean, I think that's what I heard Robert say as well.
Mhm.
So I totally agree.
Yes. Yeah, don't want you to adjust the numbers. If you're good with it, then we'll see how it goes. We're just asking questions based on what you provided.
Yeah. No, and this is a good discussion. So you guys have a very important role in managing this project. We have an important role in managing this project. And in order to be successful, us managing it together is key. And I am not pretending that I know anything better and beyond what you guys do. And it's important that you guys feel that your input can be incorporated into the plan. That's the entire intent. And based on this discussion, I do think it's probably more realistic and reasonable that we trim down that last fiscal year and put it in here. But I do want you guys to know that your input's very important into the planning and the management of this project. So I'm not backing off because just to stop this conversation, I'm backing off because I appreciate you guys' input and I think it actually finishes with a better overall product. And I like this approach on every single thing we do, and that's why I'm happy to incorporate it. And you know what? 6 months from now, we'll know a little bit better, and a year from now. And
Sure.
I hope we don't spend any money in fiscal year 27.
Thanks.
That's fair.
Yeah, fair. Thanks, Nate. Michelle, you have any questions? Okay, I guess not. And
No, she's drinking her soda.
any other questions on the cash flow?
No, and I agree with you, Nate. The only question I had was just explain it to us, because we're not the engineers, but it just doesn't kind of logically make sense that we would be that heavy on the tail.
So something happened this week that was a very stark reminder of all of us about what's important. We had a guy out on site that had a heart attack at the station. And SDG and Hitachi saved the guy's life by their quick action training, their use of the AED and life support system, CPR. And it reiterated that we're all in this together, right? I mean, we got our contractors out there that saved one of our own guys' life. It helped us take a step back and put the project issues in perspective and realize that they're just a partner, like we are trying to build this project. And I'd like to try to do that with the board as well. You guys know you have a specific role in managing this project, just like we do. And we have to stay coordinated on those roles or else, it's their project too. is the 150 people that work for this organization's project as well. We owe it to them to ensure that their lives keep going.
By the way, you guys trained in CPR and
We
all
are.
that? You
Some
all?
of our guys are, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just important that we keep this project going for them and our relationships together. That was a good reminder of what's important. So these conversations are welcomed, although they get heated. It's good because we all believe in what we're doing, but it's important that we all realize everyone's input is what makes this project successport.
Yeah,
So
well,
thank you for bringing that
We're
up.
glad to hear that the employee is okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. Okay,
What station was that, Nate?
Airport.
Airport?
okay, if there's no more questions, we could move on to the next agenda item. So the next agenda item is approval of the fiscal year 2025 operating and capital budget. Brent?
Before you is the operating and capital budget presentation and budget details for both operating and capital. There are minimal changes since the last Finance Committee meeting, as presented by Lori. However, discussed at the last presentation, there were some corrections made to slide 7, as noted by Kika and Lori. The board communications services change number has been correctly reflected. Excuse me. And slide 10, which is the expected funding sources, based on a comment from Natalie. The Oahu TAT was corrected, and the unreserved fund balance was adjusted to reflect what is currently in the cash flow report for fiscal 24.
Members, any questions on the
Sorry.
fiscal year?
Just-
I'm sorry.
Sorry. My fault. So we are requesting the board's approval for Hart's fiscal 25 FTE operating and capital expenditure budgets.
Thanks, Brent. Members, any questions? Okay, Michelle?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Hey, Brent, just one thing. The supplemental schedules in the back, after the Mahalo page. So I'm assuming when the heading says proposed fiscal year 2025 capital budget, that's the capital, that's the operating budget assigned to the capital, right? Okay.
Maybe I'm just not reading this correctly. The proposed operating budget, in that, where do I find in here the labor-related costs for the board employees? Because I have professional services, but that's not them. So where do I find that? Is it just hidden in labor costs? Or board labor costs, is that
Excuse
it?
me. Yeah, slide 5.
Yeah, is that where that is?
Yes.
So the board current expenses and the board labor costs, and right, proposed operating budget. Operating budget. So board current expenses, board. So the board labor costs, I have to read that as separate from this on side 7, right?
Correct.
Okay. Got it now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the draft of the fiscal year 25 operating expenditure budget for an amount of $138,334,551 and a draft of the fiscal year 2025 capital expenditure budget for the amount of $574 million even.
Question. Chair.
Yes.
Or do we need a motion first or?
Yes, I would like to take motion. Second, Roger. Any discussions?
Yeah, so just for clarification, are we approving the budget or are we submitting it to the city for further discussion, subject to final approval when it comes back?
Yes, that's correct. We are approving the draft of this budget, and have HART submitted to the city and county, and in turn to the city council. And when the city council approves the budget in June, the budget will come back to the HART board, and the HART board will do a final approval of the fiscal year 25 operating and capital budget. If there are changes within, that's done by city administration or the city council, then the HART board could take up those changes at that time.
Okay, so we're approving a proposed draft.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
And just so that we're clear, it goes to the mayor,
Yes.
and he can't touch it.
Yeah.
And it goes to city council, but the board, HART board doesn't touch this already, directly from this committee to the mayor.
That's correct.
So you don't get another shot next month, it goes to
Yes.
Until it comes back.
until it
Yeah.
comes back. And it's not our budget until we accept it at the end.
That's correct, by
Thank you.
resolution. Yeah. Okay, do I have,
Is there some? Nope, that's it.
Okay. so do I have unanimous consent on the budget? Thank you. Thanks, Brent. Okay, well, you're still up, Brent. The next item, bond repayment schedule.
Before you is a report that shows the current outstanding bond debt and expected repayment of debt service to BFS from HART. This repayment schedule was coordinated with and approved by BFS. I believe no action is needed for this agenda item.
Chair, this was requested by Natalie.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions on the bond repayment schedule? Okay, hearing none. Thanks, Brent. Next item, financial audit update. I have Rick as the, oh, okay, Brent, you're up again. Go ahead, Brent.
Okay. What was submitted are the are two letters from the NNK, our external auditor, the audit acknowledgement letter, which is essentially a scope of the work that they will be doing for the financial audit, and then a planning communication, which essentially enforces their commitment to present to the board. The only change here is at the second to last paragraph of page 2 of that planning communication. It does say that they'll issue the report on November 17th. It's actually November 16th,
Okay,
which
sure.
is the same day as the board.
Okay, thank you. That's it, Brent. Any questions from members? Go ahead, Roger.
Question would be, this audit, this is addressed to Lori. Is Lori the appropriate person for receiving the audit, or is that a board issue?
You want to answer because there's also a board letter that's attached to the agenda.
Yeah, this letter is just basically a rep letter. Actually, there's a 4-year contract that went through procurement. So the letter was just to confirm to Lori, and we shared with the board just the scope as stated in the contract. The report on this update, the status, the second letter I think is addressed to the board.
Yes.
And all the
it is.
information will be coming to the board one thing I want to add to what Brent said, while they're targeting the 16th for the issuance of their report, that's not a certainty yet. We haven't received a recent draft of the report, and there's also board communications that are required as part of the audit. We haven't seen a draft of that yet. So we're going to, right now we have this tentatively on the November 16 board meeting. However, we're going to be meeting with them today and try to confirm the timing and the status of the drafts, and hopefully we can get through them. If we get through everything and everything looks good and they're ready to issue, we'll be bringing that to the board on the 16th. If it's not ready by then, we may have to defer it to the December meeting.
Okay, thanks, Rick. And I just want to follow up on what Rick just said. In the packet today, there's a letter that Lori signed on September 1st, 2023. And there's also a letter that's attached to the board packet that's dated October 18th, and that's addressed to the board of
I
directors.
found that one, thank you.
I do have one minor question in Lori's letter, the engagement letter. The second sentence in the first paragraph, it says fiscal year ended June 30th, 2022. Should it be 23? You could go all the way up. Check, please. Yeah, I don't think you need to re-sign the letter,
Yeah,
but
we had several
just
items
make
on
sure.
that we went back to them on and got them to correct, but we missed that one. But yeah,
No, that's fine.
this
Right
is a
be-
consistent letter, and I think they just went through and updated the dates from last year's letter, pretty much. But this has been a consistent letter each year. By the way, this is the 4th year of their audit for us, and it was a 4-year contract. So we will be going out for procurement again. These guys are, welcome, and hopefully they will submit a proposal again. But this is the last year of using these guys. But yeah, that's a good catch. We'll point that out to them.
Okay, thanks, Rick. Question, Roger?
With your last comment, isn't it a best practice that there be a diversity of auditors over the long term?
Yeah, there is. With SEC public company clients, that is a requirement. I think it's a 7-year requirement. It's either a 7-year requirement on the partner in charge of the audit or the audit firm itself.
Yeah.
Don't quite remember. We'll check with the city. I think the city has engaged consecutive auditors, or the same auditor in consecutive periods up to a certain period. I'm not sure what that period is.
Not sure.
I think it's beyond 4 years. This was a 4-year contract. I think prior to this, we had a 3-year contract, but we tried to extend it out a little bit. So we'll evaluate that as we go out for proposals.
Yeah, no real concern, just in my memory.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. We'll check on that. But whether they can submit a proposal again or not, we will be going out for proposals once this audit is complete.
Just a comment, Edwin, you probably would know.
Sure,
I think
just
there's
for-
a council resolution that calls for a 5-year rotating.
Yeah,
Is it?
just for full disclosure, I work extensively with NNK and Charles Gooden, so I'm recusing myself from anything regarding the contract.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, that would be fine. I think we all know the partners at NNK. So you have a contract with them, or you just know
With the
them?
university's advisory board, we deal with them quite a bit.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks
I think that's
for
a
letting us
conflict.
know. I don't.
Sorry, you don't have any employment relationship with them or a contract?
No, we don't have
No,
any,
just
any
have a
financial dealings with them, but we have personal relationships with them.
No, that's okay as long as you can be fair
okay.
and impartial
As long
in
as you can
doing
be
board
fair,
business.
which we know you are.
I don't want the perception.
Okay. Any other questions on the
I have
engagement letter? Go ahead, Chair.
So it's not called CAFRE anymore. What is it called now? That's not a CAFRE. What is it?
That's CFAR, Comprehensive Financial.
Yeah, so CAFR, whatever it is.
It used to be CAFR.
Right.
Now it's CFAR.
I know they changed some of that. Anyway, does this audit become part of the cities? It does, right?
Yes.
So isn't there a time limit on this? That don't we have to get this done by or approved by a certain time?
It has to be released by December in order to issue the CFAR, because the HART audit results are incorporated into the CFAR.
So if they don't get it to us by November, Are they going to be able to make it in the CAFR or CFAR, whatever it's called?
Well, if they can get management to agree with the audit results and the recommendations and the corrective actions, then the written report will be issued in December.
Well, would that be enough time for them to incorporate into
We're
December?
expecting to be able to get this submitted to BFS in a timely fashion. We're hoping it's done by the 16th and we can bring it to the board meeting. If it's not, it'll be shortly thereafter. BFS is okay with us submitting a draft to
Yeah,
them
yeah.
with a follow-up once board approves it.
Okay.
So we don't foresee any problem with that schedule.
I knew there was a time crunch on this, and that's why I was wondering when if we could, because our next meeting won't be till December. If it's not there at the 16th.
Yeah.
Yes, we're hoping to get it approved this month. If not, we can submit them the draft and then get it approved by the board at the September meeting.
The
Or the December meeting.
CFAR will be continuously edited and changed until it's actually released. So the important things are the numbers in the report.
Okay, thank you. I knew you would know.
Any other questions? Michelle, you have any questions? Okay, hearing none. That is the last agenda item, and the meeting is adjourned. Is 10:30. Thank you.
Yeah.
Because I noticed I'm on all three committees.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. What can I say? Michelle, we counted down, so it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. I'm Michelle Brungraber, Chair of the HR Committee, and today is, God, where's my Thursday, November 2nd. It is 10:34. I gotta do the time change. I'll take roll call. I'm here, Michelle Brungraber. Anthony Alto is excused. Kika Bukowski,
Present.
Roger Morton,
Present.
and we also have Chair Colleen Hanabusa. And is Edwin still there, or did he dial off?
Yes.
Oh, and Edwin Young, are you present? Is there anyone else that I didn't catch?
Well, I think that's it.
Okay, so that's the call to order. The second agenda item is the Hart Board Executive Officer vacancy. As everyone is aware, we have a critical vacancy to ourselves and our interaction with Hart with the EO position. And if you click that agenda item open, what you'll see is kind of a draft of some options that we have in terms of how we make the selection. And so, it was sort of like, hey, well, what can we do to make the
Michelle,
selection
you need to call for
recommendation?
testimony.
Oh, I'm sorry. Does anyone have any public testimony on any of the agenda items for the HR committee today? None heard. So, sorry about that. Thank you, Colleen. Let's go back to that selection option recommendation. And so, the idea is that if we get enough more than one, and the committee chair would remove the candidates that just don't meet the minimum qualifications on the vacancy. And then we would draft interview questions with the full committee to review it at the December HR committee. And it could be forwarded to the board, but it'd have to be done in executive session so people don't see it before, right? And then the options are either full board interviews, sort of like how we did it with the ninth voting member, the pig. We could convene a pig to pre-interview and then make recommendations, and the board do the final thing. The HR committee can interview it, and the board could do it final, or we could narrow it down and then the board conduct interviews. But it always kind of ends up with the board of directors being interview key candidates, because I think that it's important that the board members are able to weigh in. And I wanted to make a note that to select the ninth voting member, we had a pig and then the board interviewed, but it did take quite some time to get all those interviews scheduled. So I wanted to hear what everybody's comments were, in terms of, what they think would be appropriate, as well as if they had any other ideas on, how we could expedite the process to ensure that once we are able to interview candidates, that we kind of do it in a timely manner so that we can get somebody out of February timeframe.
For the board executive officer as compared to the ninth voting member, I see a difference really in the types of positions. One being a board member under the charter, and the other one being an employee of the board. And I'm not sure whether open interview would be appropriate for a staff member who is an employee of the board. I think it may create problems of who would apply and other issues like that. And I just throw that out that I don't know whether we did do a board interview for the board member, but I think that's a different type of person, different type of official than a staff of a board. So I'm not sure I'd be in favor of a board interview if there were other options, but I'd be interested to hear from others that have experience in this too.
Roger, if I may, the board can do that in executive session if the board wants to interview the person.
I'm not opposed to that in executive session. I'm more concerned of putting the person out there in front of the public, and I think that would be unfair for recruitment. Just to clarify my position, that's my.
I would
position.
agree, Roger. I would totally agree with that. But when I made the recommendation, I'll be honest, I assumed we did it in an executive session.
Okay.
Yeah, and you actually don't have to put the candidates' names on the agenda. They can come in through a side door or something in executive session, so you can keep all of that confidential if the board would like to do it that way.
Okay, thank you.
So Roger, you wouldn't be opposed to the board of directors interviewing it with those modifications, right? With the, we don't put people's name on the agenda. We would interview during an executive session, and we allow them to come in kind of without being seen by the public.
I'd be fine with that.
Okay. Anybody else? Colleen, I was kind of hoping that you might have some ideas or a preference even.
I was looking at the selection options and recommendations, and I'm not sure, I guess I assume you chose not to go into executive session, because I'm just wondering about what are our constraints legally, because we are talking about a personnel related matter. So we might want to go into executive session because, like, for example, how when an employee versus something that's required in the charter that we do, I think that there may be certain questions, but I assume you're not going to go into executive session. Is that?
Well, unless I'll be honest, I talked to Dan about it, and we thought that we could do almost everything in open session unless somebody had a particular HR related or legal question about how the process worked, because we wanted it to be more open. And this was just talking about like, hey, how do we do the interviews? But if there's like really specific questions that you have that you think are better addressed during executive session, I am more than happy to. I just didn't anticipate them. That's all.
I guess the question I would have is that the HR committee, which is comprised of four, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, and Anthony. Versus the formulation of a PIG, which is something that was also on this list of proposed, and the PIG would be comprised of 5 members. And I think the issue is going to be whether if you were to form a PIG and you could just be the members of the HR committee. I don't think there'd be a prohibition about that, but then you could do the interviews and have the discussions, but everything else other than that, it would have to be at a regularly scheduled meeting of the HR committee. The reason I'm concerned is, and believe me, he has not complained, but I have watched poor Dan Gluck go through having to be our de facto almost executive officer. So I think to the extent that we can, I'd like to see this committee kind of push it along and or as a PIG of the board. But even to do the PIG, we'd have to wait to the next meeting of the board itself. So I kind of would like to have a sense, because a PIG we can form at the next board meeting, which could encompass everyone plus one on the HR committee. I don't think there's a prohibition on that. And then the interviews and whatever else can take place without calling an HR committee meeting. And I'm not opposed to I mean, it's not that we lack transparency at that point, because I think it's important to note that even if the HR committee was meeting, the HR committee would in fact be in executive session, probably doing the interviews anyway. So
Right.
I think I'm just looking at a way to get this thing going, and I don't see any reason why there cannot be a decision by this committee. And if this committee were to recommend posting a position, and I guess this is a question I would have to Dan, and whether we need to go into executive session on this, Dan can tell us, is whether the committee in and of itself can make the decision to post the position, and then go in, and when the next board meeting, we could formulate a PIG. It's only in a week or so. We could formulate, 2 weeks. We could formulate the PIG, and then you could do the interviews without being concerned so much about timing, and then you'd have more flexibility, because the issue is going to also be the people who may want to interview, that you would have to post if it's within the committee, even if it's an executive session, we'd have to give 6-day posting. People's schedule may not hit exactly the right timing. But anyway, those are the concerns that I have. It's more a matter of I think we need to work very quickly on finding an executive officer who can service this board. Because the executive officer, remember that we adopted rules at the last board meeting specific on the issue of the executive officer. The executive officer is also required to be in place to pick his or her assistant. So we have all these different things that are going to be contingent, and I would like to see us, I guess, put as a priority that we're going to look for this executive officer who will then be able to select his or her assistant, and so that the board can be efficient. I mean, you know what it's like, just to set up the agenda, how that's not an easy task, or to know which item goes where is also not an easy task. And I guess, we came to realize what was required by the loss of an executive officer. So
Yeah,
that's my concern, how to do this clearly, transparently, but expeditiously as possible.
I think, thank you, Colleen. I think I would suggest that probably the most expeditious way would be that the HR committee would approve the vacancy announcement to be posted by heart, right? We won't post it. We would use the organization to post it in the way that they post all the vacancies. And I don't think I'm going to rely on Dan on the advice on whether, I think we have the authority to do that. Is that the case, Dan?
Sorry, let me, Michelle, if I may take care of one other housekeeping thing first. So
Okay.
first for quorum for this meeting. So the HR committee has 4 members. It's you, Michelle, Anthony's vice chair, Roger, and Art. So Art and Anthony are not here, leaving us with Michelle and Roger. Now, Chair Hanabusa can be an ad hoc member. I assume that, Michelle, that you wanted to designate her as an ad hoc member so that we have 3 for quorum.
Yes, please. Can we
Terrific.
designate the chair as an ad hoc member? Thank you.
Lovely. Okay.
Dan, I'm just looking at the letterhead, unless
I-
it's changed, the letterhead, it's a mistake?
I just saw Edmund's list.
Yeah.
That's what I saw for too.
Yeah.
So I didn't say anything. Who's the fifth?
No, there's only 4 members, so we just need 3 for quorum. So we have Michelle, you, Roger, and then Chair as the ad hoc member.
Well, so Kika is not on this committee?
Apparently not on this committee.
Yes.
I apologize. I'm pretty sure this is a whole template.
See, this
So,
is what I mean
Like,
by
why
why
we
we
need
need
to
an
know.
executive officer.
and I was going to echo those comments as well, Chair, but I did want to note in response to your comments that the HART staff have been doing most of the work in staffing the board. Lori personally has been doing a lot of the work to staff the board. So yes, that huge thanks to them.
And I didn't mean to not thank the Hart staff as well, but you know, it just tells you when you have emails from so many different people, it's like, wow, I mean, just to make up for the loss of one person, you know, it is something that we've got to put on. So this is the wrong template, but I have to be appointed in order for it to be. Well, you can appoint Kika.
I think because you're here, I can double check the rules, but I think because you're here, you.
Because I'm here, I have to.
Yes.
Okay, so do we need to basically reconvene this?
No, I think we can just do it non-proton to the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, non-proton, that sounds good to me.
Okay.
Okay.
So then I think the next question was about putting together a PIG, and I'm looking at the Sunshine Law, and I don't see any reason why this committee couldn't create a PIG, which would then report back to the full board if you wanted to do that as an option. I'm continuing to look through the statute, but I think it is okay.
Okay.
Okay,
But
so
the question, wait, Belle, let me ask one question. But the question will be, at that point, this committee can create a PIG, but is it of the membership of the committee? Versus, like the board, we can pick from all the board members,
It would be that. You can assign whomever you like to the PIG.
from this committee.
No, from anywhere. From anywhere. It doesn't even have to be on the board.
Okay. So if the sentiment of the committee is to create a PIG now, this committee could create a PIG now.
Yes, though I would, maybe if in the interest of time, you could create the PIG to then report to the full board rather than back to this committee.
Okay. What's your druthers,
But
Michelle?
I'm going to double check, Chair, just to make sure that it's kosher.
my druthers is to create a PIG because I think that the PIG, because the interviews themselves, it's to do the interviews, right? It's a PIG to do the interviews. The interviews themselves are in exec session, and I think that the PIG has a little bit more freedom of schedule and posting than the HR committee does. So I'm probably in favor of, you know, a PIG first and then the HR committee doing interviews to kind of narrow it down second. But a PIG that the HR committee creates, not one that we have to go to the board to create, because that just is like end up waiting another 2 weeks, you know? What does everybody else think?
I would be in favor of forming a pig.
I think the other thing is that how does quorum on a pig work? Can we, Dan, can you,
There's no
There's
quorum.
no quorum.
yeah, there's no quorum requirement in a pig
No
either,
voting.
so it kind of helps with that. If we could put 5 members on it, so we could put the 4 HR members, and Colleen, would you be interested in serving on this pig? Or would you like us to bring those recommendations to the board to you?
I'm sorry, Michelle, can you repeat that, please?
I was wondering if Colleen was interested in serving on the pig, or whether she'd prefer that the pig bring the recommendations to her at the board.
I really don't have one way or the other. It would be whatever you as the chair wants to do.
So I think my recommendation is that we use the 4 members of the HR committee, and we invite Colleen, if she is available, to be the 5th member of our pig. Does anybody have any other member that they would propose bringing on? I think, I think a finance person could be useful, because, like, we don't have, they manage a budget, some of those things, but it's kind of really more a personnel kind of issue, which is what Roger talked about before. It's really like we're hiring an employee. So, it could just be us 4 forming our own pig.
I don't think it's a finance issue per se, because we just approved the budget.
Right,
So
right.
so the amounts are kind of there for us. So we just have to, I assume our budget will pass, the board's budget will pass by council, and even if it doesn't, we can still adopt it in the,
Yeah.
in
The
any way.
only reason,
So,
the only reason, Colleen, that I was thinking you is because you are the one that like works probably the most closely with the EO, right? On a near daily basis, I would say, working with the EO and that position, as opposed to some of the other board members that, may not even be running a committee and don't interact with them as much. That's the only reason. So if you were available, I would really welcome your input to the interview process.
I will be happy to serve on the pig.
Okay. Can we get a motion to form a pig to do the interviews? And that, so the next, before we do that, I guess the next question is, would the pig would prioritize the candidates, but if there's 5 candidates or 10 candidates, would they narrow it down to like the top 3 or 4 candidates? What's everybody's thought about that?
I think that the pig, can the pig take an action like that? Can we come back with
A recommendation?
a recommendation like that?
Yeah, I think we have time to do that, because the vacancy has to go out, people have to apply and everything, so we could do that in the pig.
And
So
the pig
we
is,
could just
is
form
supposed
the
to be
pig, and then
studying an issue. Can
right,
we,
and then the pig, yeah,
can we
that's a
actually
good point,
make a
Roger.
recommendation excluding people? I guess that's a corporation council question.
Sorry, I'm not quite following.
So if there were 5, can the pig whittle it down to 3?
Candidates?
Yes.
And present that only the 3 to the board. I
Yeah.
think that's Roger's question.
Yeah.
Yes, I think so. I might recommend that you have the other 2 candidates, just saying these are 2 that we did not recommend, but so that it's the board's decision on which candidates rather than the pigs.
And presumably those would be in executive session. to
Yes,
pick
all
the
of them
other, candidates.
Yep.
Okay. Then I would be in favor of the pig whittling it down to 3.
Dan,
I
is
agree with you,
another-
Roger.
Well, let me ask this question, Dan. If, for example, and I think the HR committee should form its parameters, and if in the formulation of the pig, is one way to do it, or do we need any kind of ratification from the board, or would it be better if the board ratifies the actions that the HR committee took in the formulation of the pigs and the parameters surrounding it at the next meeting?
I mean, certainly it would be better if it was the whole board. I mean, that's obviously then it's a board action rather than a committee action. I think the board can ratify it afterwards, and it would be fine if you want to move the process along.
Yeah, I think that may be the way. So the pig gets formed here, and it can take action. The only thing that we do at the next board meeting is we just ratify the fact that the pig was formed, and whatever parameters, like the pig will narrow down the list to 3 or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I mean, the Sunshine Law talks about that the board, like 2 or more members of the board, may be assigned to investigate a matter, and that's the recommendations and findings of the investigation be presented to the board later. So it does talk about the board, but I don't see anything that would prohibit the committee from doing it and then being ratified by the full board at a later meeting. So I think it's okay.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just think that since it ultimately is the board's action, that if the board simply ratifies it, and I don't see the board not ratifying it, that it will be no question at that point, and nobody could challenge it at that point. That's what I'm looking at more.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, Chair.
Yeah. So I guess the motion would be to form the pig, and then after that, and the parameters that you want to establish in that, like what Roger was saying about the and we have to use the word investigate, because that's exactly what the Sunshine Rule law says. So the pig will be formulated to investigate the selection of an executive officer, and the pig will adopt the criteria, and the pig will do this all on itself. It will adopt the criteria, and the pig will present the list of 3 names to the board for final consideration. Can the pig make a recommendation of a person?
Sure.
Oh, yeah. If the pig chooses to make a recommendation, they can make a recommendation. And I think this way we have, I don't know what other parameters, any other parameters, Michelle? Salary maybe? That could be confidential to the board, or is that something that's going to be public anyway? Dan, do you know?
I'm sorry, Chair. I'm looking, discussing with a colleague, and there is guidance from OIP that talks about needing 3 meetings of a board in order to have a pig, and says, it's the first meeting of the full board. Now, again, I don't know that it's necessarily prohibited from doing it the way that we're talking about, but it's not crystal clear.
It's not 3 meetings of the board to formulate?
It's always 3 meetings of the board, because first the board creates the pig, second
Oh,
the
yeah.
pig reports back, and then third the
Oh, yeah, I
board
was
can
thinking,
discuss.
wait a minute, I know that when you create the pig, you have to, then you have to accept the report, disband it, and the board has to finally, that's what you talked about, the 3 meetings.
Yeah, exactly.
Not 3 meetings to form a pig. Okay, good.
Correct. Yeah.
I thought
But
I missed something in the
Again,
law.
because OIP is using the language the full board, it's not
Right.
clear whether they mean that you have to have it created by the full board or whether it could be done like by committee. So again, probably okay. If the committee wants to be 100% safe, you can wait and do this at the full board meeting.
Up to you, Michelle. You're on mute.
And you're on mute, Michelle.
Yeah, I hear what everyone's saying. I would just take a recommendation that the committee is recommending to the full board that they ratify the pig with the members that we have selected at the next board meeting to investigate the selection of the executive officer. And I think we can wait on that if this next question to Dan, he can answer in our favor, is that can the HR committee on its own approve the vacancy position description to be posted, and knowing that if it's presented to the full board, if they have any changes, that those changes could be incorporated later into the vacancy. So can we approve the vacancy, the position description, so that it can get posted as soon as possible?
I think that's fine. Again, the full board may vote to throw that away and do something different, in which case you'd have to repost it. But
Right.
if we assume that the full board is going to ratify what the HR committee does, then again, I think that's okay.
Okay, so I would recommend that we don't even need to vote on it, but that we're making a recommendation that these members, I guess, do we have to vote on it? Anyway, that the full board ratify the PIG that we're recommending. Do I have to vote on recommending a PIG?
Well, the committee would have to vote on forming the PIG and also vote on
Okay.
the job description to be used.
Okay, so the first thing is for the selection process, that's item number 2. I need a motion on forming a PIG that will be ratified at the next Board of Directors meeting.
And make a motion to create a PIG that will be ratified at our next board meeting.
Okay, Dan, do you have enough information to capture that with the members that we talked about and the responsibilities?
I guess I have to second. I'm appointed, so I'm second.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the scope is fine. I'm not sure that I caught all the membership. Can we be clear on the membership?
Okay, the membership would be the 4 HR committee members as well as Chair Hanabusa.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
Yes, Chair seconded.
I second.
Okay,
Actually, can we,
is any-
I'm so sorry. Can we maybe go into executive session for just a second?
yes, absolutely. Let me. Oh, come on. Read the little here. The board may enter into executive session pursuant to Hawaii Revised Statute, Section 92-4 and subsection 92-5, subsection A2, to consider the hire, evaluation, dismissal, or discipline of an officer or employee, or of changes brought against the officer or employee where consideration of matters affecting privacy will be involved.
These two.
In subsection
It's okay. This
92-5,
sort of came up unexpectedly, so we're
consult with its attorneys on questions and issues on a matter pertaining to the board's powers, duties, privileges, immunities, and liabilities. Do I have a motion to enter into executive session?
So move, second.
Okay,
Second.
seconded. So we will be moving into executive.
Oh.
Hi, we're back out of executive session and we got advice from council that about how PIGs are formed in a committee versus the board. And the advice we got was that a PIG formed must be a subset of whoever forms it, basically. So if it's formed by a committee or subcommittee, then it has to be a subset of those members. If it's formed by the board of directors, it's a subset of those members. And so because we would prefer that, more than 2 members be members of our PIG, we're going to request that the full board of directors in 2 weeks form a PIG that will make these recommendations of selection process, how we do a down select and the interview questions and those kinds of things in its report back to the board. So we don't need any motion. We wanted to let everyone know that that's why we went into executive session, to get a little bit more legal advice. And what we'll do is we'll proceed to item number 3, which is the position description. So if I click on that one, I have to like be unmuted and click on them. What I did was I took the original EO position, and that was created quite some time ago, and I added some of the additional responsibilities that I felt had been grown into the position, as well as the changes that the board made directly to the rules package in terms of how they reported and those kinds of things. And I tried to articulate that in this position description. But what I wanted to do was to give all the committee members an opportunity to make comments to this kind of position description, to make sure that I captured everything, because I kind of did it solo essentially. So I wanted to give people the opportunity to read through it and see if I had captured what everyone else agrees to be the duties and responsibilities, as well as the minimal qualifications and the desired qualifications. Give everybody a little bit of time to read it. But if everyone's done reading it, let me know.
Position description.
It's under board officer vacancy,
Yeah.
and it's under the
One.
second blue. Keep going.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Second blue. Should be there.
yeah,
Right.
thanks.
whatever. So I also wanted to make the comment that with respect to the term and the salary, I think we can do the salary next before we vote on this or whatever. I mean, I have the charts. But with respect to the term, I think we received advice that it would be generally the standard term for any Hart employee that's hired, unless we take some kind of unique action to make it other than that. And it would take some unique actions, which would take time to make it other than the standard time frame that Hart employees are employed for. Is that correct, Dan?
I'm sorry, Michelle, what was that?
That the term of the appointment would be the standard for all the standard that all Hart employees are under, unless we take very specific additional actions to make it different than that, and that would take special approval and extra time.
If you're talking about the length of the length of the term of employment, I think the most that we can do is a 1-year personal services contract. It can't be beyond
Right.
1 year.
Right, and that was what all Hart employees are on.
That's my understanding. Lori could answer that better, but
I'm sorry, Michelle, what was the question?
it's about Hart employees and their terms of employment. If everyone is on a 1-year PSC,
Yes, that is correct.
yeah, she said yes.
Right, everyone's on a 1-year PSC, and that there is no mechanism to make it longer than that.
That's correct.
Correct, okay. So I had kind of a TBR there, or TBD, I don't know what I wrote in there, but basically that would say 12 months.
Michelle, oh, I'm sorry, you're on mute again, but when you said 12 months, that's for the contract time for the employee?
That's what my understanding was. Is
Okay,
that
yeah,
correct, Lori?
But it's fiscal year, so I just don't want the person to be alarmed. Let's say you folks bring them in January, it'll look like a 6-month contract, but it'll be renewed with everyone else's in July. So
Okay.
it's just fiscal year, that's all, but just to be upfront with the candidate.
Oh, I see. You don't allow them to stagger based on their entry date, because then you'd have people all over the place. You kind of just renew everybody at the same time at the beginning of the fiscal year. I think that's important, and we need to make sure that they understand that that's how it works.
Yeah, so don't
But
panic.
you know, I mean, say you don't hire them until
Right.
you know, like
You only get a
July.
3-month contract.
Right? Yeah. That it's
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
It looks funny, but that's kind of how it's gonna work.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Okay, you guys, Powell looking at it or what?
Yep.
Okay, does anybody have any comments? I mean, I'm willing to take any comments that we need to make this thing better. So, I mean, I just kind of took a whack at it.
And Michelle, I went through and looked at the positions that you noted. I noticed that one position that you did not include was the commission officer for the police commission, which is classified as an EM5. I would think that the EM1 that you had down there, I think EM3 would be a comparable position for a board, this board. I think that the police commission probably has additional responsibilities, but than this position. But that's just my view. Is I think that would be an important comparison position. Would be doing something similar. Would be the executive officer to the police commission.
And that's an
Oh, I
EM
appreciate that.
5.
5.
5. I appreciate that, Roger. I am not as familiar as you guys are of like does what for each of these little organizations. So I kind of like went through and I'm like, well, is this kind of like batch? So it was kind of, you know what I'm saying? It wasn't, I'll be honest, it wasn't completely thorough because I'm just not as familiar. So do you think in EM3 you think is more comparable though?
That's just my view, and I'm just throwing it out as one board member's or one committee member's view. Because I did go through before the committee, and I tried to do some independent research myself.
Yeah, and again, DHR thought it was 1, but it might be 3 if there were additional job duties added, but that was about it.
Okay.
I'm looking at the rule that we just adopted regarding the board executive officer, and I thought the executive officer was entrusted with the selection of staff of the board. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Yes. That's my understanding as well. Did I miss that? Is that not?
No. I was just looking for it in the rule, and the reason why was I was thinking maybe we should just attach the rule, because the rule sets forth the responsibilities.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't be able to attach that portion that we approved last time as an to the position description, because that's what I based most of it on, right? I mean, I think that's a good point. We can like include that. I think when you look at the comparative salaries, for example, the reason why there was a description of what an EM1 was. I don't have the description of an EM3. Was because when I did my first draft, Dan took that draft to HR and based a salary kind of on that. And I kind of beefed it up after that, and after looking at some of the other comparable salaries, because I thought that there really was enhanced responsibilities, executive level responsibilities that this position had, more than just kind of like being a secretary for the board, right? And so that's kind of the discussion of, you know, do we have enough content in there for it to be graded at whatever grade is recommended? Because I think the original, or the mostly original position description was graded by HR as an EM1.
And Michelle, for whatever it's worth, I mean, given the breadth of work and depth of work that Cindy had done in this position, I think it is justified to put additional qualifications in the job description if the board would like. Now, obviously, if the board increases the standards on the pool of candidates who are available, but then you are probably able to offer salary. I will double check with HR about.
Yeah, and I tried to quantify some of those additional responsibilities without embellishing, right? Or making up something that the person doesn't do yet. So all of these things I have seen demonstrated that were essential job responsibilities of an effective EO to the board, as well as fell under the board rules. I also think that you'd probably get much, instead of somebody that's kind of reaching for a position, you have the ability if you are able to justify a higher pay band, you will attract much more qualified candidates. That's not to say that somebody that's, really go-getter might not be able to, start in the position, and that's not to say that that can't happen. It's to say that you might be able to actually attract somebody that can just like jump right in and has all the experience required.
Yeah, and just to add one other clarification from HR also, they said the job duties will determine which EM it is, whether it's O1 or O3, and then the person's experience will determine where in that range they fall. But if it's advertised in a way that it is an EMO1, even if you get a stellar candidate, you couldn't give them a salary that's in the higher than the 1 range. You can't go up to a 3 just because the candidate is higher. You could put them at the top end of the EMO1 range, but you couldn't go above that, even if the candidate is overqualified.
So Dan, when the first one came back and they're like, that probably would have been a 1, I tweaked it more and like thought about it and like, kind of like added stuff. So I'm hoping that we would be able to go in and convince HR that as we looked at the responsibilities and reworked the position description, that we really have a position that would grade higher.
Yeah, I agree. And once this committee is done with the job description, I will happily take it back to HR and see what they say.
Yeah. So I mean, Roger, I'm going to kind of rely on you on does this meet above an EMO1 position description? Is there something that I have that's missing that is a job responsibility that would also help with the justification of a potentially higher grade?
Well, I know from experience, I think an executive or what do they call them? Executive assistant 2 or 3. I think a 2 in the city parlance is an EM03, and I think a 3 is an EM. I don't want to say because I'm not really sure of the thing, but I would note on the salary record that you have, generally where the beginning and the minimum and the maximum are the same number is an appointed position where that number is reported that way. And the ones that are classified as civil service positions normally are reported as just a range from the bottom to the top. I think that's the way the city reports salary information. So I saw several where that appeared to be, and my experience is most of those are contracted appointed officials as opposed to competitive merit-based civil service employees. So there's some, like myself as a director, I have easier way to appoint a contract person than I do with going through a civil service position, and I have more latitude on salary too. On the other hand, it is a 1-year term limited position. So those are the trade-offs, at least that we deal with in the city.
That's a good point. And based on that, I mean, we are really trying to hire a civil service position that has a 1-year term. So it's a little bit hard on both sides. But yeah, I agree with you that the ones that like have the same salary as minimum and maximum, those were the appointed positions.
Yes.
That I thought were but there's not but I looked at the job title, at least I'm like, well, that's kind of similar, but like I can't hire them that way. So we have to recognize that we have limitations.
Can I ask Edwin, comment? You have so many years of experience in doing this, Edwin. Do you have any comments on this?
Just two comments. The university pay scale is usually much higher than the cities or the states, and also that the use of salary ranges probably is the most appropriate way to do it. For some of the legislative employees listed in the salary scale, 150,000 is about appropriate number.
Oh, hi, Natalie. Hi, Natalie.
May have lost Michelle.
Hi.
We lost Michelle.
Oh, yeah, she's frozen.
Lost Michelle. And I think lost. Sorry, before I remember.
Yes, we have Michelle, Anthony, Art, Roger.
That's it. And I'm sitting for.
She's coming back, I think. There she is.
Oh, sorry. I dropped out. I'm at Tonopah for the Eye of Sauron solar factory is here. So, can we I don't know. I mean, should we send it to HR so we can kind of get it posted? Is it acceptable to everyone that we kind of let it go the way it is and see what it grades out at? How long would that take, Dan?
They've actually been very quick at responding to my emails. I've been very happy with DHR's responsiveness. So what we can do is if
it comes back as an EM1, do we find that unacceptable or do we find that acceptable? Do we want to go for, a higher salary than an EM1? I kind of want to.
I guess the question would be, if you post a certain range, but you decide that you want to grant more or give more, does that create a new solicitation? Or is there a way to make it so that you don't have to do a new solicitation? In other words, people may not have applied because of the range, and then to unilaterally sort of change
I don't know. It seems like
you give something else. That to me is a problem. I would think it's a problem.
Yeah, I don't want to bait and switch anyone. I want to people should know what they're applying for. I mean, it's like any GS kind of grade on the federal side. I mean, you have a range and
so
and it shouldn't take that long to come back.
Yeah, my understanding from DHR is that the job duties determine which EM it is, and each EM has a set salary range, so you can only offer within that range.
Right.
And this one is, I forget, Michelle, I don't have the numbers in front of me. It was something like 88 to 138 or something like that for EM01.
Yeah.
And about 15,000 higher on either side for the EM03. So if it goes out as an EM01 and you're hiring under that, then they have to be within the EM01 range. Even if you get a candidate who's way more qualified, you still have to keep that person within EM01. So if we want to do EM03, we need to sort of post that as a 3 to start with. So what I can do is if the committee passes out the job description, I can take it to DHR. If they approve it at a 3, we can go ahead and post it. And if not, then I just want to know what the committee wants to do. Do you want me to bring it back or go ahead as a 1?
But it would seem to me that if we, given what, and I think what Edwin said is correct in terms of the range and even looking at the descriptions, I would say that we should go to EMO3, which would raise and give us more flexibility, and we'll be within the range at that time. So I think we'll be 155 maybe.
Yeah,
at the
3
high
gets
end.
you up into the 150s. I can't remember exactly where.
and you can always hire lower,
Yeah.
you know, and offer lower. But,
Yes.
but we can't do it without the flexibility of the range. So.
Yeah, so if you post at a 3, so you'd have to hire someone who's qualified for the 3. So that's the only thing. If you have someone maybe who doesn't have the experience, they might not qualify for a 3, even if they did qualify for a 1. But if they're qualified for the 3 and they are on the lower experience side, then you would just start them at the lower end of the range, and then they can go within the range.
Chair. Chair,
Go ahead, Kika.
thanks. So I was just kind of wondering, if I read the budget correctly, did we budget 140? No.
That was what I was asking.
Oh,
It's
okay, sorry.
250
Total.
for the total, yeah, personnel, labor, 250. But what
Well, I think we have some flexibility
Robert
there.
has said is we can move money within that, but it's 250 right now,
Okay.
right?
And that
Yeah.
includes, whatever staff.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
they-
it could, yeah, it
that
could
they-
include the executive officer and staff. And, you know, and of course, we can always amend the budget if it looks like, you know, we need more than one assistant.
Yeah, and Kika, I would say that at least for this fiscal year, because we're gonna be hiring in the middle of the year, we have the 250 and we haven't spent the 250. So if you hire somebody in, say, February, it's gonna be 7 out of 12 months, right? And then do the math kind of thing. So I don't think we're gonna run into a problem this year, but next year we might need to make an amendment.
No, good point. I was thinking about the budget that we just passed. I'm not sure what the budget is now. Do you know what the budget is now? For
I
this
think the
fiscal
budget,
year?
well, no, the budget is kind of combined with all the other employees. So depending on if, you know, I mean, it's kind of an average, right? So we have a number of vacant positions. So I would bet that we're like
Okay.
kind of behind.
Yeah, I didn't think we had it. Yeah, so
A little bit.
what Laurie said is that it's covered under the HART technical budget as opposed to the board budget. So next year's budget, we're covered under the board has a line item. But because it's in HART's budget this year, we have more than ample funds to cover it.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Lori.
But I think we should be okay with 250 for an officer
And an assistant.
Right.
Yeah. I just going through that.
Lori, I welcome
Is
your
it
comments.
security salaries? Is what-
By the way.
is-
Sorry, Michelle, I couldn't hear you. What was the question?
No, Lori, I welcome your comments on the position description as well. I mean, because they're like gonna be our primary interface into you guys, so.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Appreciate that.
You know, we just want to clarify because I know how the state operates, and that's exactly the same way the state operates, but this is just salary, right? The, out of another pot comes all of the bennies, right?
The FICA comes out of another pot.
If you look at actually on FY25 budget, you'll see, I want to say on slide 6, like the board, the fringe benefits is in there. So, but again, that's for 25.
Yeah.
So we're fine for
Okay.
24.
Anybody else? I guess I'd ask for a motion to,
We may have a problem.
okay, go ahead.
If we're, what would the range be?
The range,
The high end?
the high end was 159 for the EMO3.
Okay. Because if you look at the operating budget for the next, of course, we can always change it, but if the fringe benefits are $88,000 and the board salaries is 165. So we're okay on that. And we're okay to the end of this fiscal year, but it just is something that we better think about when this budget comes back to us.
Yeah, and the board can amend for
Right.
next FY if you
Right.
need to.
Yeah, the current July 1st salary range for EMO 3 is 96,024 to 153,672.
Yeah. Did you hear that, Michelle?
Yeah, I did hear that, and I guess I'd say that, I mean, I think we're probably not going to get to it. I don't know if we will or not, but there were a number of positions that are either going to be left unfilled or would be like removed from the org chart that right now I think encumber at least some amount of money. So we could work with, Lori and her team to see if they're, how we would do that in a zero sum way in terms of the entire personnel budget.
Okay. So are we okay? Do we need anything?
I think I need a motion to, that the position description is acceptable and that the next action to be taken would be to forward it to DHR for grading. And if it comes back at less than a 3, that we would like bring it to the board in 2 weeks and try to decide what we're gonna do. But if it grades out at an EMO 3, that we just work the hard process and have it posted.
So are we in agreement that we're gonna post at EMO 3?
If it comes back as EMO 3, if it doesn't, then I guess we got a problem, right?
Yeah. So my understanding is that if it clears at 03, we'll go ahead and post. If it doesn't, we'll go to the full board.
Oh, okay. So who would make the decision that it doesn't clear? Would it be HR?
DHR. Like I said, they've been very easy to work with, and I'll continue to work with them.
And I want to just, for the public listening too, we are talking about an executive officer of the board that is the prime staff person. It's not the executive director of the of the department, just in case there's any confusion out there over the terms that we're using.
Excellent. Thank you, Roger. We don't mean Lori's job. We mean the
Yeah,
executive
we're not
officer
talking
of
about the
board.
executive director. We're talking about the executive officer of the board.
Correct.
And it's not a position that we're creating in case anyone
Right.
is gonna come up with another cartoon of me, but we're not creating this position, it exists. And I just happen to be here because we don't have enough members for
All right.
quorum.
Okay. So can I have a motion to that the position description is acceptable and that we will like take action to forward it to DHR and have it posted at an EMO 3, and if it doesn't come back as that we will bring our issue, if we have one, to the full board.
I'll move.
Second.
Okay, anybody opposed? Okay, the motion is passed. And
Sorry, Chair, just to be clear, we're talking about the version that's currently up on the screen in here, this draft 11.323.
yes,
Okay, I don't know that I have that latest draft, so if you could please send that to me, then I'll forward it on.
okay, I will.
Thank you.
I don't know, it's attached to the agenda, right? Isn't that the one that's attached to the agenda?
The latest one, it's,
It-
I can
It's
send
in
you
the
the
Bible.
Word.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
send me the Word
Yeah,
document.
okay,
Yes, please.
okay.
Actually, no, I
And,
got it from you.
Did you?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, hey, wait a minute.
Sorry.
That's how Dan got it.
No, I
But
just wanted to make sure because
I'll
we've
say
had
yes
versions going
anyway,
around.
because it's like, there's just so many confusing things. So, I'll say that item
Yeah.
B is available for the public. There were some comments that some of the positions are appointed positions if their salary minimum and maximum are the same, and they're not as comparable to a higher government salary employee salary that has a range. And that's, I don't think we need to go into that. So we'll move to C under schedule to fill the position. And what I did was I tried to draft the absolutely minimal schedule, the fastest possible schedule that may be very difficult to hit to fill the position. So we're going to C and click on that, open it. And it is just a short summary of kind of where we are. So here we go. Here we are on the 11-2 HR committee approves the PD, where we think the salary is, sort of the kind of like how we're going to do interviews. Now we're going to like the interviews and propose plans would be done by a PIG instead of the HR committee. That can be modified, and then part HR and council validates the PD and proposed salary. In this instance, on 11-16, the board would form the PIG and ratify the position description. But the position description, if it was available, would have already been posted. If they have any changes, we can incorporate them. If they have anything major that needs to change, we would need to repost the vacancy. And then all of the interview plans and other things, other administrative actions would be taken by the PIG. I think that not later than 11-22. That's like kind of basically like the whole package gets posted. So I need to ask for Lori's advice on whether that 11-22 date is realistic to have everybody checked off and being able to post online. Is that realistic if we get the position description done by like next week sometime and graded?
Yeah, Chair, once if HR has approved, then we need to do our process of doing the actual paperwork online, doing the e-forms, and then we can go ahead and post. So it's tight. It's tight, but I think maybe 2 weeks is probably more realistic, but we'll shoot for it. And then I just want to let you know that commercial websites, so we stopped on posting on Indeed for now until we can get an actual procurement out working with our procurement people, because we were just going straight to Indeed. But we will post on the Heart and City website. Yeah, the Heart website.
Okay, so I mean that gives you, probably 2 weeks. So I mean, I agree with you. I think it's tight. Like I was trying to make the shortest schedule, and things may slide. But you might as well put the aggressive schedule first, right? So
of course.
Okay, so that date seems okay, and the commercial website is pending procurement of a commercial vendor to post all of our vacancies.
Yes.
So how long do I have to have it posted? Can I have it posted for 7 days? And if I have enough candidates, I can close it? How does that work?
You can have it posted as long as you want. Just in the climate that we're dealing with right now, I mean, so positions like HFD or refuse collectors, you keep that to a minimum because you get hundreds of candidates. I don't think we're going to have that problem here. So just keep it up until you folks, find the good candidate. Because even during the interview process, you might find that that's not the person. So keep getting resumes in. Yeah, so Edwin is saying we can insert till it's filled. But yes, Michelle, yes, Chair.
No. So we can if we review the candidates as they come in, and we have at least one candidate that meets the required qualifications, we can leave the posting open and interview that candidate, or we have to close it and interview the candidate.
You can leave it open and continue with the process. Yep.
So the hope is that, that we go beat the bushes and tell everybody, hey, there's this great job opening, and, or people talk about it. I don't know, try, especially if it grades out as a 3. I think I would like to hope that it gives somebody an opportunity to excel, right? But like you said, like we've had like really important high salary positions out there, and they were just difficult to fill because you have really challenging required qualifications. So right, but we'll be able to, if a qualified candidate applies, be able to have the PIG conduct an interview with any qualified candidates that apply. So, okay, so say somebody applies, they get the vacancy, they apply. We could prioritize the candidates and interview somebody, and if that doesn't pan out, you just wait for the next person, right?
Correct.
And if it does pan out, then you
We can take the posting down. Yes. Uh-oh, frozen.
I will tell you, I was trying to make the dates hit the board of directors meetings. And that was the key reason for that. But my experience tells me that even if a qualified candidate applies quickly, that it wouldn't be till probably February that you would be able to get somebody on board. And I just think that's work in the system as hard as you can. And Lori, I would defer to you, but my experience is that it's not like you can just hire somebody and they come in next week.
That is correct. And usually they need to give their existing employers some time, at least minimum 2 weeks, and then to onboard.
Right.
For us, I think our process takes about a month.
Right. So I want to temper everybody's expectations of, yeah, we've got the vacancy out. And somebody even applied. Like, even if somebody applies that you like, you're still going to take some time. So,
Yes.
so my estimate is that, you're going to be really hard pressed to get somebody in earlier than the end of January, beginning of February. And that's just reality. Dan's like, I don't like that reality. But I just wanted to just make sure that we are tempering the board's expectations, because it's a hard time for everybody, right?
Yes.
Including Lori, who's doing all the agendas.
Yeah.
So, if nobody has any problem, I just kind of wanted to just kind of share with you my thoughts about that, and share with the public our thoughts about, if you do try to, even if we try to expedite things, you can't make people apply, and, you can't make the system work faster than the system's going to go. But we can take advantage of every advantage that we have. So, that's kind of where we are. Okay. There was no action on that because we're going to be forming a PIG. So I will go to agenda item 3 and ask Lori. We had spoken about this, and everything was pending because we might not have been able to get an org chart changes in time for the HR committee meeting. We might have to just defer it. So, Lori, do you need to defer this item, or are you ready to?
No, we actually, yeah. Thank you for that. For offering that. Sandy was able to come back in and get all of the changes that we think that you folks asked for. Mainly, chair was the colors, so we put it back to fair. Yes, fair enough. So we put it back to the colors. So city filled, request to fill, vacant, delete, and on all of the consultants, we put it back to the original that I came up with. So that changed. I think, Michelle, you asked for asterisks next to the people who are exempt or appointees. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 right there on page 1. And then on the last page, Chair also asked for the totals that I used to have. So in the bottom left corner of the last page, it has number of positions filled, vacant, delete, and request to fill. So it comes out to the 135. But now know that this is a living document. So the 42, we had Cindy in that, and then she left, so it's 41. And the other thing that Chair asked for was the dollar amounts, the salary. So we did check with Corporation Counsel and our procurement, and we cannot make that public. So what we're doing is, and I'm sorry, Chair Sandy is still working on that, and we will only send that information to Chair to keep it confidential. So thank you, Sandy. I know, yeah, she couldn't, anyway, I don't want to elaborate, but thank you for working on this. She worked all through the week. and to
No,
get
no,
it
no,
done.
thank you. So it's not the government employees grades. Those could be on the chart if you wanted them on the chart. It's the
Yes,
contractors,
you're
correct?
correct. So what we kind of like what you did with the executive officer, we can do like the SR rating. So
Right.
it's an SR 22, and then so Sandy has
Yeah.
that, and then we can put a SR 22 ranges from, let's say, 80,000 to 100,000. That we can do.
right.
But
Yeah.
Chair was asking for, it's the consultant one that is very sensitive, and that's a
Yeah,
fair,
no.
you know, you would want to see that, right? What does it cost to, as a city employee that we're paying, and we are going to put the fringe benefits in there too, because to compare apples to apples with the consultant, you're paying everything, right? Fringe, overhead,
Right.
profit, all of that. So,
Right. Right.
yeah, yes.
Well, they did labor categories though, and even though we might not get that labor category, they bid them, but they bid them kind of as a package, and so it's not really appropriate to kind of like pick out one person and do that. The other thing that I was noticing is the Board of Water Supply has like their own whole little thing, okay? Because somehow working the water stuff is so unique that the water supply guys have their own thing for everybody that works there, and I'm like, well, I mean, like, why don't we have our own thing? Because our stuff is so, I mean, yeah, it's similar, but it is really unique
When you
to
say
building
thing,
rail.
Catch that
what are
either.
you referring to? Their own thing? What do they have?
They have their own salary scale for all their positions.
No, they don't.
Yeah, according to Roger, that's not true.
Yeah, I mean,
It still
goes-
the appointed positions are different, but they have a board too, and the board sets the appointed positions for the chief engineer and for the deputy.
Yeah, yeah. So the Board of Water Supply doesn't have unique.
They follow the
Job
same,
description.
they follow the same UPW HGEA schedule unless they're exempt employees.
Oh, unless they're exempt employees. And maybe I misspoke. I'll do some more research and 'cause I was reading something and I probably misspoke. So I will.
Well, I think
Delete
the
my
chief
comment,
engineer
do
makes
some
more than a city department head. But that's
Yeah.
a board appointed position.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm looking for, these are really we have a few unique positions that are not appointed, and we have to decide how unique they are. That's all I'm thinking, is that I do want to train people as transportation rail people, So anyway, trying to take care of the guys.
That's your
And it
15th
seemed
part,
like-
isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's not like I can put any kind of engineer in there. I mean, once I train them up, like, they're eventually working their way to fill higher positions that are very unique, that are so unique that, that sometimes we can't fill them. We have to have a consultant fill them. And so if I'm able to fill them with a government person, then I want to have some,
Yeah, the city has 60
latitude.
or something. It's even higher.
Anyway, okay, so, Colleen, comments on the org chart?
What was that? You wanted to comment?
I don't know. I don't have any comments. I think the color change helped me like evaluate it a little bit better. But I mean, basically what we were trying to do is, the org chart is due at the beginning of the calendar year. So we were like kind of doing draft, and then like, being able to, in December, see if we can get something pretty final so that we can take it to the board in January. That's all. Or maybe in January we do it at the committee meeting. But it was more like, it took us so long going through the iterations last year that I wanted to, even if it was going to be changing, that I wanted to like, get some of this stuff done. So, we'll take whatever comments anyone has to add to it so that it's easier to read, so that we have more information, those kinds of things. But basically, we are responsible for presenting the proposed org chart for the next calendar year in January. So that's what this is. It's a discussion and getting feedback so that we can be prepared. I want to do it early. Okay. So we'll take comments, however you want to give them. If you want to send them through Dan, if you want to, send them to Sandy directly, we can take those comments and do that. But otherwise, we'll show a draft to the board and then finalize it. Or if Lori feels comfortable, doing, then we can do that. But we'll take comments all the way whenever anybody has them available. Anything else on that item? Lori, do you have any comments?
No, Chair.
Sandy, is she online or is she not?
She's here. She's here if you have questions.
I don't see, can't see
Oh, she's in
anything.
the back hiding.
Oh, Sandy, I'm so sorry. I really appreciate all of your hard work. You kind of jumped in and under the gun. So thank you. But I do want to give Colleen a little bit more time to look at it. So if she does have any comments, then she'll be providing them. I don't want to put her on the spot and just be like, okay, so is it good?
I'll give you comments.
Yeah, I'm sure she's gonna have comments
later.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I think we appreciate your comments. Okay. Agenda item 4, part succession planning.
Yeah, so I apologize, Chair. I wasn't, because I walked out last meeting right when you were talking about this, so I wasn't quite sure what exactly you wanted me to talk about. I know you wanted me to take a look at the document that you prepared, and I think you have some really good points in there on what the next candidate qualification should have. I would add in, for most times, I know this position is, I know this position is different in that it's an executive director position, but other similar director positions in the city, they're usually a
Deputy.
a PE, a professional engineer. But I know that you have in there either transit or construction. So just the two things I would comment is a PE and also budget. You had in there schedule, quality for the project, but I would also put budget in there too.
Exit highway in 2.4 miles and exit 35.
Must be her Google map.
Sorry, it's my nap.
No worries, no worries. And then just some in general for the management of the HART team. It's always good, like you mentioned before, is to have succession plan for myself, for my deputy, and then all of our managers, top managers. We only have about 40 people of HART city employees. And so to have a succession plan when we don't have that much depth is a little bit challenging. I mean, we can say things like, okay, if I get hit by the bus, Rick will take over. And if both of us are out, then the project director and deputy project director. So we can do something general like that. But, and the other benefit that HART has is, I think you'll see when you try to fill the executive officer position, it is challenging right now. So the benefit that HART has is we have reached back to our consultants as a temporary. I don't like that as a priority that we do that. Because it's so much more expensive than hiring a city employee, but we can use it as a temporary stopgap until we can fill with a city employee, and they have further reach back. But there are still some key positions, as you folks saw with project controls, and we're still struggling with director of planning and environmental to fill those key positions. So maybe you and I can meet offline, Chair, to see exactly what you wanted me to do as far as succession planning, a formal presentation or document. I wasn't quite sure, so I apologize.
Okay, let's do that. Why don't
Okay.
we schedule a meeting? And I'll just articulate for everyone is that I just think it's one of those things that a mature organization should have, but especially because we have, depth issues and we do have issues filling positions. It is good to just kind of be like, okay, in a crunch, we're gonna move this guy up, or we're gonna like have go find a consultant right away because it's gonna take us a long time to fill the position. And if your succession plan says we think this guy might be capable, what follows it is we put together a formal mentorship plan for some of the employees that we think are government people that have the opportunity to move into other positions, and then we plan for their training and um their ability to move into leadership positions. That's all.
I like
So
that.
so
I like that, Chair. And actually, we've done that. Nate, Matt, Vance, we've actually done that in the organization. So
right.
Right. It's not formalized, but you're right. As we see the stars, the up and coming stars in our organization, let's move them up. So I like that. So
Right,
definitely
right.
I'll
It's more
schedule a
like let's
meeting.
get together. It might be another, it might just be a one-page document. This is here's the
Okay.
process that we're going to use every year. We're going to get our leadership together. We're going to look at our employees. We're going to like do this, kind of thing. So let's talk offline
Okay.
and we'll take another shot at it. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll schedule that.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Adjournment.
Yeah. Does anybody have any other comments, or does anybody have anything else?
Yeah,
Thank you
this
so
is
much.
Natalie.
Go ahead. Yes, Natalie. Thank you.
Yeah, so I wasn't real clear on what the purpose of this was. I mean, we had a discussion at, I think, the prior HR committee meeting. And I guess I kind of wanted to put out a comment of concern, because if I understand correctly, what you're asking to be done in part is to have the executive director form qualifications for that very position. And, that's typically not done, at least not that I've seen. And, unless there's some kind of retirement coming up or something like that. So it just seems to be a bit awkward to me to have her, Lori, do that, helping out with those qualifications and descriptions. And then the other thing is, we're gearing up for the city center guideway and stations, and her plate, I think, is already full, as well as the top people in Hart administration. And so, where does this fall in the line of priorities? Because I understand what you said, that you want to have people with the ability to move up and fill positions should something, some emergency happen. But I just kind of wanted to put that out there for you folks to think about, because it is something, as an observer, I had questions about and concerns about. So thank you for letting me comment.
Thank you.
She's frozen again.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment. I don't think am I frozen? Or am I on? I think I'm online.
Your picture's frozen, but we can hear. Oh no, we lost her. Okay.
Headed down into one of those things.
But she says she's not driving. I thought she
Somebody
said-
else is driving.
Oh, somebody else is driving.
That's what I think. Somebody else is driving, not her.
There's a series of
Yeah.
balance.
Yeah. You go down into the MIDI, or what do they call them? Yeah.
I can't imagine driving. It's too hot.
From Barstow to Las Vegas is less than 2 hours. People go 85,000.
You're kidding. I don't like it. I mean, I can't remember the last time I went to Vegas.
Change of office. And the football team, basketball team.
Really?
And the entertainment center, well, miniature Los Angeles. Small.
You did? Okay. She, yeah. You heard her say that, Roger, okay?
Pretty good, Roger. I can do it, but that's okay. Because we can adjourn.
Okay. Oh, because we lost quorum.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. We're terminating.
Okay.
Anyway, I think so.
Michelle, just like my cousin,
And what's
my
that?
cousin's on.
Oh.
All right, so we are unable to reestablish communications with Michelle. Oh, sorry, I was going to end the meeting. So we're unable to reestablish communications with Michelle. So pursuant to HRS 92-3.5C, because we can't reestablish, the meeting is automatically terminated. We could wait up to 30 minutes, but it seems like we were at the end of the agenda anyway. So I think that is the end of the meeting.
Okay.
Yes.
Bye, everybody.